before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. And we have some distressing images for you now. A warning, because police have warned the danger is not over after at least 5 people have been shot at a school for adults in Sweden. I'll bring you all of the latest developments on this throughout the rest of the show. And back here in Blighty, the Prime Minister is now under huge and growing pressure over allegations he broke lockdown rules during COVID after he declared his voice coach an essential worker who broke strict tier rules. Starmer hounded Boris out of office over a slice of cake, but insists that no rules were broken. But as the storm clouds gather for Starmer, I'll be joined by Richard Holden and Lee Anderson. And an astonishing Freedom of Information request has revealed that West Yorkshire Police spent an incredible £1.3 million last year on DEI, and that's diversity, equality and inclusivity posts. And that's the equivalent of 44 bobbies on the beat. I'll speak to 2 former coppers who reckon it's time to do a Trump and kick DEI out of our police forces. And after a 15-year-old boy was stabbed to death by another 15-year-old at a Sheffield school, is it time to overhaul laws to protect the identity of juvenile offenders? Is naming and shaming teen killers a brutal but necessary step to stamp out the cancer of knife crime? That's all coming in your next hour. Well, to show, always a pleasure to have your company. No rules were broken, said Sir Keir Starmer again, this time over a voice coach who travelled from Brighton to London during lockdowns. A voice coach, an essential worker. And also, do you remember, no rules were broken during that beer and curry session when he got the nickname Sir Beer Corman. No rules were broken over free gear care. No rules seem to be broken at all by the Teflon Prime Minister, non-stick Starmer. Is it time, actually, for the same rules to be applied with equity? How come lockdown rules finished off Boris Johnson? How come they simply ping off the armour of our Premier? That's today's debate. Is it time for Starmer to face the music? Get in touch, gbnews.com/you'll say. Now to your headlines, and here's Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Martin. Good afternoon to you. Our top stories. 5 people have been shot at an educational centre in Sweden. The extent of their injuries remains unclear. The shooting took place on a campus in the central city of Örebro, where schools for both children and adults are located. A warning, viewers might find the following footage distressing.
Utan jacka. Alltså jag går ner till henne nu.
my God, wat goed ding, volle groeten. Oh my God, goed ding!
And this footage shows students following emergency procedures by hiding under their desks. 5 people have been taken to hospital. 4 of them have undergone surgery and 2 are stable. Police have also confirmed one of the injured people is the suspected attacker. Well, this facility and nearby schools have been locked down. A major security operation is continuing and police have said that the danger may not be over. Police are continuing to question a teenager after a 15-year-old boy died in a fatal stabbing at a school in Sheffield. The victim was named yesterday as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. Flowers, candles and balloons have been laid on a wall outside the school. Sheffield United fans say they will pay tribute as well. Now, the former Children's Commissioner for England has suggested knife crime involving teenagers is a national crisis that needs a national response. Meanwhile, stop and search data reveals children as young as 10 have been found carrying bladed weapons. Last year alone, just over 100 cases of youths between the ages of 10 and 17 were found with knives.
I lived in America for some time, and they had even worse instances of school shootings. And it's such a tragedy. It traumatizes local communities because parents then have to send their kids to school the very next day or the week after. And it's always going to be in the back of your mind, can it happen another time at that school or another local school? I just worry that we always think national government's got the answer, that somehow if we put some people in Whitehall to think about it, the answer will come. Actually, maybe we should just make sure that head teachers have that power. They know what's going on in their local school. They know where there may be a risk. Maybe we should give more power to people who are, on the front line, closer than expecting national policies to be the answer.
That was Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Richard Fuller, speaking to GB News earlier. The case of convicted child serial killer Lucy Letby is to be reviewed by a commission that investigates potential miscarriages of justice. The Criminal Cases Review Commission received an application from Letby's lawyers yesterday. Well, police notes have revealed she was absent for more than a third of suspicious incidents at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Lucy Letby was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others. Today, a panel of international medical experts has given alternative causes of death in several cases against Lucy Letby. Retired neonatologist Dr. Xu Li says he believes his findings on skin mottling were misinterpreted by the prosecution. He said in a new paper he published in December last year there were no cases of skin discoloration when air was injected into the veins. More updates throughout the day here on GB News. China has responded following the US imposing 10% tariffs on its goods. Now, not long after the US taxes on China began at 5 a.m. UK time, China said it was imposing 10% tariffs on American crude oil and agricultural machinery and 15% tariffs on coal and liquefied natural gas. The President Donald Trump confirmed last night that the US will delay imposing tariffs on Canada and Mexico for a month after agreeing a border deal with both countries. It has sent world markets into a spin. The government has announced a major trial aiming to transform breast cancer screening with artificial intelligence. Almost 700,000 women are expected to take part. It's hoped the technology will help specialists catch cancer earlier, as well as freeing up radiologists in a bid to reduce waiting times. According to Breast Cancer Now, some 55,000 women and 400 men are diagnosed with the condition every year in the UK. Secondary Care Minister Karen Smith told GB News the National Institute for Health Research will start recruiting around 700,000 women shortly.
The difference it makes is having less clinicians involved in the work of the scanning and looking at those results, using AI to do that, freeing up more clinical time and making that happen faster. We screen 2 million women a year, so we should get to that number fairly quickly and then be able to analyse those results. So it's really exciting use of AI, because I think we talk about AI in sort of general terms, but being able to bring something of this size to this number of women, I think is a really exciting development on World Cancer Day.
And the actor and comedian Brian Murphy has died at the age of 92. Murphy was best known for his role in the 1970s British sitcoms Man About the House and George and Mildred. He passed away At his home in Kent on Sunday morning, his friend and agent Thomas Bowington has described him as a joyful and profoundly good-hearted man. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with more in just under half an hour.
Thank you, Aaron. Right, let's get stuck into today's show. We've got a meaty menu. Sir Keir Starmer has denied breaking lockdown rules after his voice coach appears to have travelled more than 50 miles between lockdown tiers to meet him.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key word?
And that was Sir Keir Starmer dodging questions last night in Brussels. Are you convinced? Well, just a few days before Keir Starmer met with his voice coach, he was calling for harder, tougher, stricter lockdown measures.
Easing the restrictions, I think, is going to be the next big mistake for the Prime Minister. And he, rather than sort of saying, well, I'm not going to change the rules, it's over to you, families and communities, you take responsibility. That's not the act of a Prime Minister. The Prime Minister should say, I'll take the difficult decisions, not hand them over to individuals. We can see that the tiered system isn't working in the way the Prime Minister promised. More people are going into the higher tiers, so it's not strong enough.
Now, that does not sound like a man that's very happy to have an actress around to polish his vocal cords in an evening, does it? And let's not forget that Sir Keir Starmer spent months and months hounding Boris Johnson to resign.
Game is up. You cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker. And it's time to pack his bags. Only then can the government function again. Only then can the rot be carved out. Only then can we restore the dignity of that great office and the democracy that it represents.
Yeah, it's always time to give other people the boot, and it's always time for inquiries into the wrongdoing of others, because the plot thickens. Look at this. His voice coach, Leonie Mellinger, put out a tweet in 2020, in June, calling for Dominic Cummings to be investigated for his eye test trip to Durham. There we go, two-tier rules there. And of course, Cummings wasn't the only one to take a trip to Durham, because yes, Keir Starmer and his deputy, Angela Rayner, were spotted having a cheeky bevy and a curry there, a lager-fuelled Labour lash-up, although they were cleared of breaking lockdown rules again. But the investigation into that takeaway earned the Prime Minister this glorious nickname.
Sabir Korma, Mr. Speaker, is currently failing to hold himself to the same high standards that he demanded of me.
Now, once again today, Sir Keir Starmer insists once again that no rules were broken. But is it starting to feel that no matter what the indiscretion, different rules seem to apply to the man his critics call two-tier Keir Starmer? Now, let's get the latest now with GBNews political editor Chris Hope, who joins me in the studio. Chris, there is a feeling, is there not, that whatever the indiscretion, go back in the mists of time, the rules are never broken when it's Sir Keir Starmer. How can it be the case that a key worker, a voice coach, travelled from a strict Tier 3 into Tier 4 London, gave Sir Keir Starmer a vocal lesson, don't know if he wants his money back on that one, and yet still no rules were broken? This is precisely the kind of thing that the Labour Party would have hounded Boris Johnson out of office for. Is there a continual feeling that different rules apply to the man I'm starting to call non-stick Starmer?
Martin, I mean, yeah, the answer is no. I mean, the number 10 are very clear. The rules were followed. No question, you are correct in what you say there, that Sir Keir Starmer would be pressuring the Prime Minister about this were the roles reversed. But as far as number 10 is concerned, the rules were followed. The rules then, let's go back to December the 24th, 2020. The Boris Johnson Brexit deal had just been announced. You know, it's very important, I think, that the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, spoke and gave Labour's view on that deal. Leonie Mellinger had been working with Sir Keir Starmer from 2017 to 2021. Through lockdown, she had key worker status, we are told, by the Labour Party.
Why?
Let's finish what we know. She then travelled to give Sir Keir Starmer some advice on preparation for that speech he gave on that day, a short statement, a televised press conference on December the 24th. We are told she was helping with speech preparation. She's preparing Sir Keir Starmer for a speech that day. That is for them, that is a key worker status issue. So she may not have been on the staff of the Labour Party, but she was being treated as a key worker and had been since 2017.
Why can't you do it via Zoom? Everybody else in the country.
These are questions which we are seeking answers from Leanne Mellinger. Why not do it by Zoom? Others did. Labour may have felt that only in person would that have worked. I mean, there's no question that the rules were as they are then, and there's no question also that Labour would have been pursuing the Tories exactly as hard as the Tories are pursuing Labour on this.
And I think that's the precise point. There is absolutely a feeling that the rules don't apply. I mean, don't forget, this was for breaking tier rules. I mean, you couldn't make it up. This is two-tier Keir breaking tier rules before it was called two-tier Keir.
But you said that, nothing ever sticks. To be fair to them, the police did investigate previously on the Durham beer curry event. No charges were brought forward, no problem there. So, to be fair to Keir Starmer, he has been investigated. He did say, I would resign if found guilty of wrongdoing. He wasn't found guilty of wrongdoing at all. So the police looked at that. They haven't looked at this because the Labour Party say no problem here.
But Keir Starmer, a couple of weeks ago, didn't call for a national inquiry into rape gangs, did call for a national inquiry into Dominic Cummings' eye test. He called for a national inquiry into Boris Johnson's wallpaper. The point I'm trying to make is, it seems to me that Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party get on their high horse, and isn't that the point? They seem to live by this higher moral standard. When they're caught with their fingers in the till, no rules are broken, I wonder if people are starting to not buy this anymore.
There's a risk of being hoisted by your own petard, no question, if they are found guilty of wrongdoing. I do wonder whether the Conservatives may feel they want to question the Prime Minister at the dispatch box and get him to state what happened at the dispatch box, as Boris Johnson did. Because the reason why Boris Johnson was forced out and lost the confidence of his own team, well, the final reason was because he made those remarks that triggered that inquiry into what he said in the House of Commons. Did he mislead the Commons? So, there may be get Sir Keir Starmer on the record about this, and then we'll hear, as things stand, we have him on the record yesterday. Of course not, didn't breach the rules, and all rules were followed. But as things stand, Labour say there's nothing wrong here.
OK, well, they would do. Stick with us, Chris Hope, because I'm now joined by the Shadow Paymaster General, Richard Holden. Richard is not remotely happy about this. In fact, you wrote a stinging letter to Downing Street yesterday on this, Richard Holden. And I just want to ask you the same question. A lot of people today are asking, Sir Keir Starmer was on his high horse about any moral indiscretion during lockdowns, over freebies, over donations with the Conservative Party. And once again, no rules are broken.
No, well, he's stuck between the tiers here, is Keir, because obviously there's this level 3 versus level 4, and we know that there is illegal to travel between those areas during lockdown, and Starmer was one of those people who was vociferously trying to pursue everybody for anything. And he also said there should be no statute of limitations on COVID related issues as well, which I think is going to be quite sticky for him the more we see from this, because the more that is revealed, the deeper he seems to be in it. And I cannot understand, Martin, how on earth anybody could classify a voice coach, an actress, or somebody teaching you acting as a key worker, when any form of student doing an acting course or anything like that themselves would not be actually at university at that time in those tier areas. It just seems to me that it's one rule for him, one rule for the Labour Party, and another rule for everybody else right across the country when it comes to this. And it's only now that this has been come out. They've never been clear about it, never been upfront about it. Yet it was very clear at the time that on the 24th of December 2020, that there's tier 3 in Brighton and Hove area, tier 4 in London, and it looks from all the evidence we're now seeing from social media from the time that people were travelling between those areas.
You're absolutely right to point out the list of key workers. I've got a list here. Doctors, nurses, teachers, social workers, those in the justice system, those who work in religious areas, national and local government workers, those in food production, public service workers such as police, armed forces, firefighters. There's no vocal coaches on this. Do they think we're ridiculous or what?
Well, quite. Look, my mum was working as a ward clerk in a community hospital where people had COVID during the pandemic, and she was a key worker. if somebody had told me that actresses and voice coaches were key workers, I would have found that laughable at the time. I'm sure Keir Starmer would have found it laughable at the time. Yet now this is what they're relying on for their defence. It seems to me this story's got a long way to run, and there are some really serious answers for Keir Starmer. You could see, Martin, just how uncomfortable he was in Brussels yesterday, trying to sideswipe those questions from journalists. I think from Jack Elsom at The Sun, who's been quite a bit on this, there are really serious questions to be answered here, because Keir, as you say, he seems to have been a bit Teflon. Whatever seems to stick to others doesn't seem to stick to him. Well, I think it's about time that the Prime Minister calls for an investigation, just like he called for an investigation into Boris Johnson, who, by Sue Gray. Now, maybe Sue Gray would be quite interested in doing this inquiry after he gave her the order of the boot himself not that long ago.
OK, Richard Holden, I'm joined in the studio by Chris Hope. He's got a question for you.
Richard, viewers and listeners might be thinking cynically that were the roles reversed, then you'd be saying, look, nothing to see here, Boris Johnson's innocent, move on Labour. Aren't you just doing what you have to do as the opposition in giving the government a kicking? And isn't it basically time to move on from tears and lockdown rows? I mean, isn't it time just to give this government a chance, Richard?
Well, look, I think, Chris, one could argue that if it wasn't Keir Starmer himself who had said there should be no statute of limitations on this, that was his argument at the time. If he hadn't himself lifted to such a high pedestal on which he was then casting judgment on everybody else, I think the real question here is about his hypocrisy around the Labour Party at the time, who weaponised this as much as practically possible against Boris Johnson and against Rishi Sunak. And we all remember, Boris was in the presence of a cake, and Rishi turned up early for a meeting. Well, it's quite. I think with those, if people were being fined on that basis, then ensuring that your voice coach was shifted 50 miles across tiers to come and help you out. I think there's going to be big questions asked here. That's why I've written to the Prime Minister, and I'm yet to get a response.
OK, maybe he's busy having his vocal cords polished. Richard Holden, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Always an absolute pleasure. Well, join me now for a counterpoint is the Labour activist Chris Worrell. Chris, welcome to the show. A lot of people here are saying this is just a matter of hypocrisy. If it's good enough for the goose, it's good enough for the gander, but it doesn't seem to be good enough for non-stick Starmer.
Well, look, there we go again, a load of old cobblers from the lot who backed Boris for actual law breaking, and now they want to clutch their pearls over Keir Starmer hiring a voice coach. I mean, give over. I mean, let's get this straight. Like, while the Tories were having lockdown raves, Keir Starmer was polishing up on his public speaking. I mean, that sounds like proper villainous behaviour to me. I mean, if that's their smoking gun, then they're in worse shape than we thought.
But Chris, are you seriously saying that to the list of doctors, nurses, key workers, food production, those in the army, we can add vocal choir practice? I mean, what planet are you on? A vocal helper is not a key worker by any stretch of the imagination, no matter what side of the political spectrum you sit on.
Well, we've seen that no rules were breaking, and let's get this straight. I mean, it's not about the rules, is it? It's about desperation, and they've got nothing real on him. So they're scraping the bottom of the barrel. And meanwhile, those guys are putting actual COVID lockdown breakers in the Lords. You've got Lord Bailey there. I mean, Nick Candy, are we going to bang him up too from the new Treasurer reform? He was partying. I mean, let's be honest, like, having public speaking before you as a leader of the opposition, it's hardly committing a crime, innit? And that's what the police have found. Nothing to worry about there.
So you don't think there's any indiscretion? You don't think that from Sabir Korma having that lockdown lash-up, you don't think that having someone round to help with your vocal calls, and by the way, you might want to get a refund on that, it sounds exactly the same. You don't think there's anything to see here? Just move on.
Well, let's think about what was actually happening during those times. I mean, the Tories were stuffing their mates' pockets full of cash with dodgy contracts. You've got all these other stuff lying for their teeth, treating the public like mugs. And at the end of the day, is this meant to be the scandal of the century? Don't behave, Martin. It ain't. The kid's not going to go anywhere at the end of the day, and the public aren't going to fall for the nonsense. If the Tories want to talk about resignations, maybe they should look at their own benches.
All right, well, we'll have to leave it there. It just seems to me it's different tiers for Kears. You know, he was 2-tier Keir, Tier 3, Tier 4, more tiers than tiny tiers. We've got to leave it there. Chris Worrell, always a pleasure. Thank you very, very much to have you on the show. Thank you. And thank you to you as well, Chris Hope, getting locked up here in all these tiers. On a different note now, we'll have the latest on the shooting at what is now known as an adult centre, not a school, in Sweden. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I'm really pleased to see this story. It's the news that bowel cancer screening, the age for that is going to be dropped from 60 to 50. And this is really, really important because bowel cancer is one of the biggest killers, and more people appear to be getting diagnosed with bowel cancer in their 50s. Not entirely clear why. And there was an inspirational woman called Deborah James who I actually met when I used to be the Shadow Health Secretary, and I remember meeting her when she had her cancer diagnosis and supporting her campaign, and she sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but it was a phenomenal campaign, and I think did inspire the nation. And this is so important. So people in their 50s are going to be sent these kits in the post. And I suppose my plea is just do not ignore these kits because you can deal with cancer if you catch it early enough.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is not the most pleasant thing to do, and a lot of us aren't used to it and talking about it and whatever, but it is essential, obviously, to do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the other reason I wanted to sort of flag this is, I mean, we can sometimes make ourselves sort of pretty miserable looking at the newspapers, but this is undoubtedly a good initiative that the government have done this, and that campaigners have persuaded the government to do this. So, look, I just want to plea to everybody watching, if you get one of these kits, use it.
And, of course, I think it's really important within that to point out that this would not have helped Deborah, because Deborah was 40 when she died. And what's really important when you see stories like this is to pay attention to what your body is telling you. And if you have symptoms that are weird, it is important to go to your doctor and to talk about them and to take the tests.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:26 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, police have confirmed now that 5 people have been shot at an adult education centre in Sweden. And join us now with the latest updates and developments is our Homeland Security editor, Mark White. Mark, what do we know? Earlier on, we were saying this was a school shooting. Now it appears we have a bit of a different perspective. What's the latest?
Well, it's a school campus with a number of different schools with different ages of students. There are reports that the shooting actually took place at a campus that caters for adult students, an adult education establishment within that wider campus, but of course the whole campus has been affected with multiple schools on lockdown. We've got some images that want to bring our audience at the moment, and we should say that for some people these are distressing images where you hear clearly the student that's taking the video of the gunshots that are being fired is really quite distressed by what she's filming. Let's take a look.
utan jacka. Alltså jag ska gå ner till henne nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning. Folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning! Oh my god!
Now, media in Sweden are reporting that several people have been killed and up to 15 injured.
Wow.
As far as the Swedish authorities are concerned, well, we just had a news conference about 20 minutes, half an hour ago, in which they were only prepared to confirm that 5 people have been shot, including a man who's believed to have been the attacker, who suffered gunshot injuries as well. So a number of the injured have been taken to area hospitals, including the local Örebro University Hospital, and have undergone surgery as well. A very, very frightening experience for those students who are still, some of them, in lockdown while the police try to clear that school and make sure there is no wider threat. We want to bring you some other video that's actually in one of the classrooms where you can quite audibly hear the alarms that are going off there and the students hiding under the desk. Take a look at this. Well, the Swedish Prime Minister has described this as a very shocking and sad event. All of the resources that are required will be made available to local authorities in that area. Police from that regional city of Örebro are being supplemented by the Swedish National Police as well, as they try to bottom out, Martin, exactly what the motivation was for this horrific event that unfolded at lunchtime Swedish time.
And Mark, what some information I've garnered, this is an education centre, as you say, for over 20s, but they do have primary and secondary education for those with intellectual disabilities and immigrants. And also, it's interesting, the gun laws in Sweden. There are quite a large number of guns in Sweden, of course, because it's a nation where you can legally own guns if you have a hunting licence. I believe there are almost 2 million legal guns, so there'd be ample opportunity for somebody with malintent, Mark White, to get their hands on a gun if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a vast country, a small population of about 10 million or so, but a large country in terms of the geography. It's the largest of the Nordic countries, and a lot of that area is sort of forested areas where there is an awful lot of hunting that takes place, and the Swedish population, many of the Swedish population do take part in hunting and hunting trips, and yes, there are a lot of guns in circulation, but historically, Sweden didn't have a very significant gun crime problem. That has changed, though, in recent years. That country is grappling with a surge in violent crime, all manner of violent crime, from shootings to stabbings to bombings. Much of the violent crime has been linked to the very significant surge in immigrants to Sweden, in particular concerns over asylum seekers that have come in from the Middle East. We have to add, though, nothing at this stage to suggest anything that may be linked to immigrants with regard to this particular incident. It's still too early. The police say they're trying to bottom out what the motivation could have been, but all we can say is that the media in Sweden, quite separate from what the police are confirming officially, which is 5 people having been shot, including the suspected attacker, the media saying that actually there are several people who have been killed and up to 15 injured.
And you're absolutely right, we don't know the motives yet of the assailants, who has now been confirmed dead, as you said. But you're absolutely right to point out there has been an explosion of violent crime in the country, driven by rising immigration, and indeed the Liberal Swedish government at present paying illegal immigrants $36,000 to leave the country. More information will be coming out to us throughout the afternoon. Mark White, thanks for that update. We'll be sure to come back to you as fresh information emerges. Thank you very, very much for that update, Mark White. And it really is an astonishing situation when you look at the numbers of guns in the country, 2.3 million civilian guns, 2 million of them legally. 8% of all households have guns. It would be very easy for somebody with bad intent to get their hands on a gun in Sweden, and this has led perhaps to this tragic shooting. OK, lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including we'll reveal the astonishing amount of money that West Yorkshire Police have spent on diversity initiatives. It's absolutely mind-blowing, 1.3 million quid. First is your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
And it's 3:33. Good afternoon to you. Our top stories. 5 people have been shot at a school in Sweden. The extent of their injuries remains unclear, although local media are reporting several people may be dead. A warning viewers may find the footage that's coming distressing.
Utan jacka. Alltså jag går ner till henne nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning. Folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning! Oh my god!
This footage shows students hiding under desks following emergency procedures. Now, the shooting took place on a campus in the central city of Örebro, where several schools for both adults and children are located. Police have confirmed 5 people have been taken to hospital. 4 of them have undergone surgery and 2 are stable. Police have also confirmed 1 of the injured people is the suspected attacker. The facility and nearby schools have been locked down. A major security operation is continuing. Sweden's Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson has just released a statement saying it is a very painful day for the whole country. A panel of international medical experts has concluded Lucy Letby did not murder any babies after outlining significant new evidence. Letby is serving 15 whole-life prison sentences after being convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others in 2015 and 2016. Well, this 14-member panel has laid out that bad medical care and natural causes led to the baby's deaths. Letby's defence lawyers have announced they've asked for her case to be investigated as a miscarriage of justice, and the study is likely to form the basis of the submissions to that body. More updates on that throughout the day. Finally, people wanting to buy weight loss jabs online are to face stricter checks after some with eating disorders were given prescriptions. The General Pharmaceutical Council has told online pharmacies a patient questionnaire will no longer be enough, nor will an email chat or indeed people sending photos of themselves in. Instead, checks on someone seeking jabs such as Wegovy will include verifying the person's BMI in a video consultation in person or via GP or medical records. And if pharmacists don't stick to the guidance, they could face inspections or investigations. Those are your latest headlines. More from me just after 4 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Colder weather ahead. Yes, it is pretty mild out there today, but it's going to turn quite a bit colder with the return of nighttime frosts through the rest of the week. But it is going to be largely dry through the rest of the week. Not dry out there today thanks to this weather front. It's been slowly creeping across the country, providing some pretty soggy conditions in the west. And for this evening, it'll turn damp across East Anglia and the southeast, but should be out of the way by midnight. Lots of showers coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, some snow on the hills. Most of England and Wales dry and clear through the night, so it will be a colder night than last night, with temperatures in towns and cities down to 2 or 3 degrees, a touch of frost in the countryside. As we go into Wednesday, though, yes, a bit chilly, but generally good-looking day. There'll still be some clouds and a few showers northwest England, and particularly into western Scotland, where there'll still be a fairly brisk breeze, but generally the wind's easing. Much of eastern Scotland starting fine and sunny. Same goes for Northern Ireland. 1 or 2 showers will drift in on the breeze, as they will across northwest England, maybe even West Wales and southwest England. But most of England and Wales will be dry and fine and sunny, and many places will stay that way through the day. A bit of cloud will bubble up here and there. There's the small chance of the odd shower drifting into Wales across Northern Ireland. Certainly showers will keep going in western Scotland, but for the vast majority, It's a fine winter's day on Wednesday. Bit of a chilly start, and then temperatures come the afternoon lower than today, so it will feel colder than today, but these numbers pretty much bang on average for this time of the year. It will turn quite cold quite quickly tomorrow evening. Still a few showers in the far northwest, but otherwise dry, long clear spells. And you can see that blue hue on the map of frost forming pretty rapidly. Thursday's then another fine and sunny day with a bit more cloud spilling in for Friday and Saturday, and for all of us turning colder.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Leicestershire, the M1 northbound is partly blocked after a collision between junction 21A for Leicester North and 22 for Colville. The outside lane is blocked through there at the moment. In Staffordshire at Burton, Lichfield Road, the A38, that's still partly blocked by two lorries involved in a collision earlier between Clay Mills and the Branston interchange. In Berkshire, the M4 eastbound is partly blocked for repairs. There after junction 13 for Newbury and the A34. In Surrey, delays on the M25 anti-clockwise in the roadworks area, and that's between junction 11 at Chertsey and junction 10 for the A3 at Wisley, so do expect delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Time is 3:39 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now get ready for this, because a Freedom of Information Act has revealed that West Yorkshire Police are spending an absolute fortune on diversity initiatives. The total diversity, equality and inclusion staff bill comes to this. Look, on your screen, £969,188. And then if you add on to that the external training, that costs a grand total of £1.3 million. Now, meanwhile, an independent watchdog found that West Yorkshire Police requires improvement on investigating crime. Only 6.6% of crimes in the region get a judicial result. So there we go. You're paying £1.3 million for cops to dance the Macarena, and you've got fat chance of getting your burglary solved. Now, joining me now in the studio is the former Scotland Yard detective, Peter Blexley. Peter, I saw you jump on this story this morning. It's fair to say, my old son, you're not particularly happy about it.
No, I'm particularly unhappy about it because whilst diversity, equality and inclusion policies pollute all our public services, no matter what they may be, I would be less angered about this if West Yorkshire Police were, number one, spending less money, and number two, if they were using so fewer police officers. There's an inspector, there's a sergeant, there's 6 PCs that are all in one way, shape or form DEI ambassadors, and what on earth are they doing? I guarantee, I very much doubt they're arresting people, charging people, taking them to court and seeing them convicted of crime. It's a nonsense. It has to stop.
And when you go through the detail, I mean, some of these jobs, you literally couldn't make them up, except they have 6 positive action. Look, here's some coppers. Look, 6 positive action ambassadors, uniformed, paid £60,000 each to walk around dancing the Macarena. This is not the sort of policing that people want to see on the streets. Surely the head of diversity, equality and inclusion at West Yorkshire Police Force gets 92 grand a year. 92 grand a year to ensure that ethnic minorities get jobs. Do we want people to be getting the jobs because they're the best ethnic minority, or simply the best person for the job? And actually, when you look at the crimes that get solved, 6.6 DEI, does that spell don't expect investigations?
Sadly, for many victims of crime, not only in West Yorkshire but throughout the UK, that's exactly the situation we're faced with, because policing is in such a crisis. And these people that run these schemes, they create their own jobs, they write their own briefs, and then they spout their own DEI nonsense, some of which I'll give you just a brief quotation or two. Because, I mean, please, I've read it, so viewers and listeners and yourself don't have to. You really don't want to waste time in your precious lives. But it says here, the DEI team ensures West Yorkshire Police is a fair and equitable organisation for its residents and visitors to the region. Now imagine if you want to go on a short break to see where Wuthering Heights was inspired by. I'm sure you're going to go before you drive into West Yorkshire. Is this an equality kind of place? Can I rely upon it? Yeah. I mean, it's utter tripe and nonsense. And what do these departments create? What do? They don't arrest people. They don't make anything. They don't sell anything. They're just enclaves for people to use millions of pounds of public money on initiatives that only really they are interested in.
And the funny thing about it as well, there's also an external provider. And, of course, this will be where people come in from outside the police forces. You all sit in a canteen or wherever, and they teach you how not to be racist. They teach you how not to be transphobic. That costs 361 grand a year just in how to educate coppers. Add all this up, £1.33 million. Peter Blexley, I looked up the West Yorkshire Constable starting salary, £30,000. Divide all this up, you get 44 and a half coppers. You could have 44 more bobbies on the beat for the price of all this. I put it to you, with a 6% crime solve rate, people would prefer more coppers than more coppers dancing the Macarena.
Oh, yes, they would. And there are many, many people that are casting an envious eye across the Atlantic and seeing a newly elected president saying, I'm going to cut through all this kind of nonsense. I'm going to stop it and get a firm grip on government and public spending. And I bet many of those people are wishing, if only that could happen here in the UK.
Now, of course, those who are in favour of this would say the police has been often called institutionally racist and transphobic, all the rest of it, homophobic. There needs to be positive action. But as you say, the taxpayer doesn't care about a lot of that. They care about results. Do you live in hope, Peter Blexley, that we might have a Musk moment, a Trump moment, where all this stuff gets blasted out of the police force?
I joined a police service where there was loads of unacceptable racism back in the 1970s. And growing up, we listened, we learned, and we evolved. So many of my friends now are either second-generation immigrants, whether they be from the West Indies, from India, or elsewhere. But do you know what those people did? They integrated into the UK, and it was almost through a natural kind of process with many bumps in the road, I'll accept. It was integrated. We were told it was the way forward. We were told it was going to happen, and it was gradual. What has happened in recent years is there has been a tidal wave of immigration into this country, which is not what we were expected, not what we were told was going to happen. And now, look, we've got diversity. We don't have inclusion. We've got numerous cultures, some of which live in their own enclaves, do not integrate, and consequently, there is so much disquiet within the United Kingdom.
OK, Peter Blexley, we have to leave it there. It's always a pleasure to have in the studio. Thank you very, very much. Peter Blexley, a great friend of the show. Now, West Yorkshire Police told GB News in a statement, we are dedicated to building a workforce that reflects the diverse communities it serves and investing in resources for better outcomes for all. Diversity, equality and inclusion is central to the police and crime plan, essential for fostering trust, confidence and public safety. And this aligns with our public sector equality duty and equality objectives. So there we go. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun, who can blame you after all this nonsense, then here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi there. If you're looking for some winter sun, actually the Mediterranean's the place to find it. Plenty of sunny skies during the next few days, although Greece has seen some heavy rain, and that's clearing on Wednesday, followed by windy conditions through Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. Italy through the Balearics into Spain, Portugal and the Canaries, indeed plenty of sunny skies, and it remains that way until the end of the week when it does turn increasingly unsettled.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Lauren, let's start with this, shall we? How children's TV may be harming, not helping young minds.
Yeah, so this is an article in the Express today, a big double-page spread as a result of some new research in a new book that's coming out by a child psychologist, saying that children's television, and I think perhaps more importantly, the way that children consume television and video product now is perhaps not as healthy for them as we would hope it would be. And there's quite some distance from children's television of the past, of the sort of the Bagpuss and Clangers and Ivor the Engine era. And I think what's interesting about this is particularly the how children's television is consumed angle, because children are now put in front of screens significantly more often than they were, certainly when I think we were growing up. The content that they are consuming is not great for their brains and their learning and development, which Floella Benjamin of children's television fame is now leading a big crusade to say that some of this is really, really bad for children.
These days, they're not watching the TV that we all watched when we were growing up. They're not even watching GB News in the morning.
What are they thinking?
Would you believe it? But they are watching this absolute drivel all day long on YouTube, and because obviously all our TVs are now connected to the internet, or they're getting TikTok on their TV. It's not even, so they don't even necessarily have to have smartphones or iPads. They can just watch this stuff on TV, and it is rubbish. They are watching it and they're obsessed with it. Oh God, Skibbity Toilet or something. Have you heard of this?
No.
No? Well, you'll have viewers who have got who are parents of sort of 13-year-olds, and this Skibbity Toilet thing is, they're all obsessed with it, and this is a really annoying sort of theme tune or thing that they sing at you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Angela Rayner looks set to team up with Conservative heavyweights Dominic Grieve to form a 16-strong council on Islamophobia. But would it stifle legitimate criticism of Islam as a religion? Could it even lead to a de facto blasphemy law? Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined in the studio with Peter Whittle, the founder of the New Culture Forum. Peter, always a pleasure to have your company. A lot of people are very, very concerned about this because, you know, it is legitimate to criticise any religion, except this now might make it illegal.
Yes, they're very right to be very concerned. This is an incredibly dangerous thing that is being planned. Just to give you an idea, there is a new definition of Islamophobia which was adopted by Labour and which could well come in with this new council and become law. It's much broader. Islamophobia, Martin, anyway, is a made-up, nonsensical term, anyway. But what this new definition does is it actually makes virtually all criticism of Islam, or indeed Muslims, almost completely impossible. It will bring in a new blasphemy law. What it really means is that in order for multiculturalism to kind of keep working, our very freedoms are actually now going to be undermined. By that, I mean our freedom of speech, which is, you know, absolutely basic in our country. No one should get any kind of special treatment. Yeah. We've always had the ability in this country, you remember Life of Brian, you remember all of these things, to criticise a belief system. Islam is a belief system. What this is doing is essentially outlawing any criticism of that, and indeed what it calls expressions of Muslimness. So what we're going to see is things like, for example, if you might mention Muslim grooming gangs, that's a problem. If you have a view that you want to express about the wearing of the burqa, that's a problem. In other words, it's everything. This is absolutely insidious. It's a genuine and real attack. And it will include, also, it will cover what you want to cover on this channel, for example.
Yeah, now, everybody can agree we have existing hate speech laws. Nobody should be persecuted for their faith, their sexuality, their ethnicity, whatever. But we do have laws that already deal with that. Why do we need something specifically to cater for Islam? And, for example, the Batley Grammar School teacher is still in hiding for simply showing a cartoon. That will be illegal, presumably, under this.
Of course it will. The thing is that we have a kind of de facto blasphemy law already in place. You mentioned Batley there. You know, the teacher is still in hiding 4 years later. Go right back to Salman Rushdie and the fatwa on his book, The Satanic Verses. All the way through now, basically, people have kind of internalised as well this fear, which is what it is, a fear of Islamic reaction. And so as a result, there's very, very little criticism. What this does, it actually widens it and it makes it official. It's a disgusting piece of legislation if it actually does end up being legislation. And basically, I would say everybody simply must ignore it. I certainly will not abide by it.
It certainly has caused a huge uproar. Thousands and thousands of people commenting, including Robert Jenrick, saying the government should drop plans. It is deeply flawed. Thank you very much, Peter Whittle, for joining us in the studio today. Always an absolute pleasure to have your company. Peter Whittle, who's the founder, of course, of the New Culture Forum. Now, Keir Starmer is under huge and growing pressure over allegations that he broke lockdown rules during COVID. It constantly seems that no rules are broken if you are non-stick Starmer. Well, I expect some fruity reaction from this man next. Lee Anderson joins me in the studio, never short of a word or two. And I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News, Britain's news channel. But now here's your weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Colder weather ahead. Yes, it is pretty mild out there today, but it's going to turn quite a bit colder with the return of nighttime frosts through the rest of the week. But it is going to be largely dry through the rest of the week. Not dry out there today thanks to this weather front. It's been slowly creeping across the country, providing some pretty soggy conditions in the west. And for this evening, it'll turn damp across East Anglia and the southeast, but should be out of the way by midnight. Lots of showers coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, some snow on the hills. Most of England and Wales dry and clear through the night, so it will be a colder night than last night, with temperatures in towns and cities down to 2 or 3 degrees, a touch of frost in the countryside. As we go into Wednesday, though, yes, a bit chilly, but generally good-looking day. There'll still be some clouds and a few showers northwest England and particularly into western Scotland, where there'll still be a fairly brisk breeze, but generally the wind's easing. Much of eastern Scotland starting fine and sunny. Same goes for Northern Ireland. 1 or 2 showers will drift in on the breeze, as they will across northwest England, maybe even West Wales and southwest England. But most of England and Wales will be dry, fine and sunny, and many places will stay that way through the day. A bit of cloud will bubble up here and there. There's the small chance of the odd shower drifting into Wales, across Northern Ireland. Certainly showers will keep going in western Scotland, but for the vast majority, it's a fine winter's day on Wednesday. Bit of a chilly start, and then temperatures come the afternoon lower than today, so it will feel colder than today, but these numbers pretty much bang on average for this time of the year. It will turn quite cold quite quickly tomorrow evening. Still a few showers in the far northwest, but otherwise dry, long clear spells. And you can see that blue hue on the map of frost forming pretty rapidly. Thursday's then another fine and sunny day with a bit more cloud spilling in for Friday and Saturday, and for all of us, turning colder.
Be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Cheshire, the M6 northbound is partly blocked after a breakdown. It's between junction 17 for Crewe and 18 for Middlewich and the A54. In Kent, the M20 coastbound is blocked after a collision. That's happened between junction 3 for the M26 and junction 4 at Leybourne. In Berkshire, the M4 eastbound, that's partly blocked after a breakdown between junction 8 for Maidenhead and junction 7 for Slough West. And in Gloucestershire, the M5 northbound, that's still partly blocked by a breakdown just by the exit to the A38 at junction 16 for Aztec West.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, police have warned the danger is not over after at least 5 people have now been shot at a school for adults in Sweden. We'll bring all the latest developments on this breaking story throughout the show. And meanwhile, back in Blighty, the Prime Minister is under huge and growing pressure over allegations that he broke rules during lockdown of COVID after he declared his voice coach an essential worker who broke strict tier rules. But Starmer hounded Boris out of office over a slice of cake, but insists that no rules were broken. As the storm clouds gather for Starmer even, I'll be joined by that man, Lee Anderson. And Freedom of Information request has revealed that West Yorkshire Police spent an astonishing £1.3 million last year on DEI, that's diversity, equality and inclusivity posts. Now that's the equivalent of 44 bobbies on the beat. Is it time to do a Trump and kick DEI out of our police forces? And after a 15-year-old boy was stabbed to death by another 15-year-old at a Sheffield school, is it time to overhaul laws that protect the identity of juvenile offenders? Is naming and shaming teenage killers a brutal but necessary step to stamp out the cancer of knife crime? That's all coming in your next hour. No rules were broken. How many times have we heard that? No rules were broken when it was the Serbia Korma, the lager lash-up for the Labour Party in Durham. No rules were broken there. No rules were broken when Keir Starmer hired a voice coach. A key worker, to my knowledge, is somebody who keeps the nation running. A nurse, a police officer, a teacher, a dustbin man, a supermarket worker, and that does not involve a voice coach. Seriously, Two-Tier Keir was disobeying tier rules before the name Two-Tier Keir even stuck, but he continually seems to allude to the fact that the rules don't apply to him. My question today is simple. Are we in a situation where the Prime Minister is non-stick? Is this simply non-stick Starmer who thinks the rules don't apply to him? And is it time for him to face the music? Is it time maybe for him to even go? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. But before we get stuck into that, here's your headlines, and it's Aaron Armstrong.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 2 minutes past 4. Our top stories. 5 people have been shot at a school in Sweden. The extent of their injuries remains unclear, although local media are reporting a number of fatalities. And a warning, viewers may find the following footage distressing.
Utan jacka. Alltså jag går ut henne nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning. Folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning!
Now, this footage shows students following emergency procedures by hiding under desks. It's understood 6 schools and a restaurant were locked down when the shooting took place on a campus in the central city of Örebro, where several schools for adults and children are located. What police have said is that 5 people have been taken to hospital. 4 of them have undergone surgery. 2 of those are stable. Live pictures here from Örebro in Sweden. Police also said one of the injured people is the suspected attacker. The security operation continues, a major operation in place, and we will bring you more as soon as we get it here on GB News. A panel of international medical experts has concluded Lucy Letby did not murder any babies after outlining what they say is significant new evidence. They believe bad medical care and natural causes led to the baby's deaths. Letby serving 15 whole life sentences after being convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others in 2015 and 16. Well, Letby's defence lawyers have announced they have asked for her case to be investigated as a miscarriage of justice. A chair of the panel, Dr. Xu Li, says there are alternative explanations for each of Letby's convictions.
We did not find any murders. In all cases, death or injury were due to natural causes or just bad medical care. In our opinion, the medical evidence doesn't support murder in any of these babies, just natural causes and bad medical care.
Police are continuing to question a teenager after a 15-year-old boy died in a fatal stabbing at a school in Sheffield. The victim was named yesterday as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. Tributes were paid at the scene and on social media. Flowers, candles and balloons laid on a wall outside the school. Sheffield United fans say they will also pay tribute to him. The former Children's Commissioner for England has suggested knife crime involving teenagers is a national crisis that needs a national response. Meanwhile, stop and search data has revealed children as young as 10 have been found carrying bladed weapons. Last year alone, just over 100 cases of youths between the ages of 10 and 17 were found with knives. China's retaliated after the US imposed 10% tariffs on its goods. And not long after the US taxes on China began, around 5 a.m. UK time, China announced it was imposing similar 10% tariffs on American crude oil and agricultural machinery and 15% on coal and liquefied natural gas. President Trump made the announcement last night that the US will delay tariffs on Mexico and Canada for a month after agreeing a border deal with the presidents and the prime minister of those 2 countries, although it did lead to a slump in global markets yesterday. The government has announced a major trial aimed at transforming breast cancer screening with artificial intelligence. Almost 700,000 women are expected to take part. It's hoped the technology will help specialists catch cancer earlier, as well as freeing up radiologists in a bid to slash waiting times. Well, according to Breast Cancer Now, around 55,000 women and 400 men are diagnosed every year in the UK. Secondary Care Minister Karen Smith told GB News the National Institute on Health Research will start recruiting women for this survey as soon as possible.
The difference it makes is having less clinicians involved in the work of the scanning and looking at those results, using AI to do that, freeing up more clinical time and making that happen faster. We screen 2 million women a year, so we should get to that number fairly quickly and then be able to analyse those results. But it's really exciting use of AI, because I think we talk about AI in sort of general terms, but being able to bring something of this size to this number of women, I think is a really exciting development on World Cancer Day.
And people wanting to buy online weight loss jabs are to face stricter checks after some people with eating disorders were given prescriptions. The General Pharmaceutical Council has told online pharmacies that a patient questionnaire or an email chat, or indeed photos being sent in of hopeful patients, will no longer be enough. Instead, checks on someone looking for jabs like Wegovy will include verifying BMI in a video consultation in person or via GP or medical records. And if they don't stick to the new guidance, they could face investigations or inspections. That's it for the moment. I'll be back with more around 4:30.
Thank you, Aaron. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has denied breaking lockdown rules after his voice coach appears to have travelled more than 50 miles between two lockdown tiers to meet him.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key word?
All rules are followed there, said Sir Keir Starmer, rather grumpily on his way out of that press conference last night in his motherland, Brussels. Don't forget, just a few days before Keir Starmer met with his voice coach back in the day, he was calling for harder, tougher, stricter lockdown measures.
Easing the restrictions, I think, is going to be the next big mistake for the Prime Minister. And he, rather than sort of saying, well, I'm not going to change the rules, it's over to you, families and communities, you take responsibility. That's not the act of a Prime Minister. The Prime Minister should say, I'll take the difficult decisions, not hand them over to individuals. We can see that the tiered system isn't working in the way the Prime Minister promised. More people are going into the higher tiers, so it's not strong enough.
Well, that was Keir getting tough on tiers. Does that sound like a man who's happy to have an actress around for an evening to polish his vocal cords? Now, let's not forget, Sir Keir Starmer spent months, absolutely months, hounding Boris Johnson to resign.
Game is up. You cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker. And it's time to pack his bags. Only then can the government function again. Only then can the rot be carved out. Only then can we restore the dignity of that great office and the democracy that it represents.
There we go, there's Keir Starmer talking tough, but while his masked vocal coach here, Leonie Mellinger, put out a tweet in June 2020 because the plot thickens. Look at this. She was calling for Dominic Cummings to be investigated for his eye test trip to Durham. Now, don't forget, Sir Keir Starmer also demanded a full national inquiry into that trip to Barnard Castle. Now, of course, Cummings wasn't the only one to take a trip to Durham. Because look, Sir Keir Starmer and his deputy Angela Rayner were spotted having a cheeky beer and a curry there. In fact, it was a lager-fuelled Labour Party lash-up. Though don't forget, they were cleared, of course, once again, of breaking any lockdown rules. But the investigation into the takeaway did earn the Prime Minister this glorious nickname.
Sabir Korma, Mr. Speaker, is currently failing to hold himself to the same high standards that he demanded of me.
Sabir Korma. Now today, Sir Keir insists once again, you've heard it, that no rules were broken. But is it starting to feel that, no matter what the indiscretion, different rules seem to apply to the man his critics are calling two-tier Keir Starmer? Well, joining me now in the studio is GBNews political correspondent Catherine Fawcett. Catherine, welcome to the studio. It's like a broken record, no matter what Sir Keir Starmer does. Be it having a Korma, be it having his vocal cords polished by a key worker, a voice coach is not a key worker by any metric. Nothing ever seems to bother him. The same petard that hung Boris Johnson doesn't seem to apply to the man I'm now calling non-stick Starmer.
The Prime Minister's name does seem to have a lot of rhymes, doesn't it, that are brought out and used against him. And it does feel, doesn't it, like whatever they want to talk about, something comes along and derails it. So here he was in Brussels yesterday talking about strengthening relationship with the European Union, instead of which the talk is all about what Donald Trump is going to do next. And as he goes out, this question about rule breaking, he was clearly irritated. He clearly thinks that all the rules were followed. But I do think this work exemption and this key worker status are doing quite a lot of heavy lifting. Of course, we remember, don't we, that bring your own bottle in the Downing Street garden in 2020. Oh, it was a work event. And so we hear that this was okay. This voice coach, Leonie Mellinger, who came on Christmas Eve to help the then leader of the opposition hone his speech on Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. Now, somebody close to the Prime Minister today has told GB News that the rules allowed people to go to work. She was preparing Keir Starmer for a speech given that day, and we know that she'd been classified as a key worker. But of course, many people would argue that possibly that could have been done over Zoom. A voice coach might not fit into what most people would think of a key worker. And now we know not only was she there, but then she travelled to Brighton. So she travelled between tiers, which again was not allowed. The official position is absolutely, though, there is nothing to see here.
Of course, but you're absolutely right to point out the key worker. The key workers list, I've got it here. Doctors, nurses, teachers, social workers, those in the justice system, religious workers, the bishops, and she's an actress. The actress said to the bishop, journalists, government workers, food production workers, police, armed force personnel, firefighters, prison staff, nothing to do with vocal coaches. Do they think we're stupid? Seriously, it is not an essential worker to have a voice coach. People are getting cancer diagnoses over Zoom. How can you not have a voice lesson over Zoom? And seriously, to the point, all that thing about breaking different tier rules, and here we go with another nickname. There were different tiers for Keir. Tier 3 to Tier 4. No rules are broken. That was something that could get you or me into serious stuck. Once again, it didn't apply to Keir Starmer. And I think that's the point. A lot of people out there, Catherine, are just thinking different rules just seem to apply to this guy. Left, right and centre.
Yes, and the Prime Minister's spokesman today absolutely doesn't want to go there. They're saying, well, look, we can't comment. This is before he was Prime Minister. The political team are saying, look, there's nothing to see here. But part of the problem, of course, is that he was so virtuous in denouncing the behaviour of the Conservatives during lockdown, calling for tougher restrictions, longer lockdowns, harsher lockdowns. So I think this is politically pretty tricky, and I think the risk is that for all they came in promising that they were change, that they were different, that they would clean up politics, I think there's a number of people out there who will look and think they're just all the same and also pretty hypocritical.
Catherine Fawcett, I think you've nailed it. Thank you very much for joining me in the studio today. And now let's bring in the former Chief of Staff to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and that's Mr. James Price. James, welcome to the show. Isn't this just about equity before the law? It's about the rules being applied to everybody in the same manner, and particularly when you think Sir Keir Starmer was on the warpath. He wanted a national inquiry into Boris Johnson's wallpaper. He wanted a full national inquiry into Dominic Cummings' eye test. Nothing to see here when he's got a vocal coach polishing his vocal cords in Downing Street. I put it to you, this just feels like absolute two standards for the man they're calling two-tier Keir Starmer.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, isn't it? And the story is going to run and run. He can't run and hide from the scrutiny forever. Prime Minister's questions are coming up tomorrow, and I think that's going to be a very bruising one for him. It'll be interesting to see just how hard people go in for him. They should go hard. There's a lot to unpack here. First of all, by the way, he should get his money back, because if he's had a vocal coach and he still sounds like a kind of Dalek with a heavy cold, it's not really worked very well for him. But I think that you've got the hypocrisy point that you've made very well there. The fact that he was so holier than thou about the Tories and about Boris having a bit of cake and all these things, only to discover that on several occasions, whether it's the beer or whether it's the vocal coach and what they were doing together on Christmas Eve, I think that there's the hypocrisy thing in there. It's also just Starmer's whole mindset, his whole worldview, is if he hasn't technically broken the rules in a very technical reading of these very rushed tier systems that were thrown up, and that you can argue in front of a court that you can get away with it, then absolutely everything is fine. And that's not how most people see these things. It's not how most people are given the benefit of the doubt when they're at work. You know, everyone gets as a kind of British sense of fair play, and he clearly thinks he's above that, but he's not.
And I think you're absolutely right. You know, I mean, for what it's worth, I think a lot of these rules were just draconian and a little bit ridiculous, particularly towards the end. Nevertheless, they were the rules, and more to the point, they're the rules that Sir Keir Starmer endlessly was preaching about, endlessly getting on his moral high horse about, being the white horse, you know, the shining vanguard of moral purity. And then, when it turns out, you know, there was the free gear Keir, no free suits from Lord Alley. Well, no rules are broken, nothing to see there. When it was having a cheeky curry and a few lagers at Durham Castle, no rules are broken there, nothing to see there. And now once again, when you're getting your vocal cords polished up, nothing to see here. Isn't that the point? People just think, it's like, come on, lads. You know, we'd have been in big trouble if we did any of this. People getting arrested for having a coffee. People getting arrested for sitting on a beach with a friend. And like, when this goes on, it's not just actually a Labour Party problem. It's people looking on thinking the whole political class think different rules apply to all of them.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that's true. It was disappointing to see that people in the positions of power were breaking these rules, no matter what the party was. And I would have liked to see any politician, all politicians, stand up and say, you know what, we did what we thought was right at the time because we thought that COVID was going to be much more dangerous than it actually ended up being. And we thought we had to clamp down the country this hard. It was all very brutal. We realise now that perhaps it was impossible, unless you were really vulnerable to this, to abide by these rules. Humans are social creatures. We did our best. We made a mistake. We're sorry. But as you say, Starmer didn't do that. At no point did he say anything about releasing or how difficult these rules were. He wanted the lockdowns to stay in for longer. He wanted the punishments to be harder and more severe, and now he's being hoisted up on this. I do think that perhaps, you know, given that he's had such an abysmal track record as Prime Minister so far, if he'd have been doing a great job and focused on the national interest, people might have given him the benefit of the doubt. But as we're seeing just now, he's so desperate to give away the Chagos Islands, sovereign British territory, upsetting our best ally, the Americans, and giving the country of Mauritius not £9 billion anymore, but double. He's giving them £18 billion of British taxpayers' money that we don't have to comply with international law against our own self-interest. So I'm sorry, if you want to go meet your vocal coach, you're going to be held to a very swingingly high standard for doing such a terrible job as PM.
Indeed, and, you know, giving away 18 billion quid, that's enough to make me sing like a soprano. Thank you very much for joining us. James Price, the Chief of Staff to the Chancellor of the Exchequer there. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, nevertheless, earlier on in the show, Labour Party activist Chris Worrell thinks that Keir Starmer, of course, hasn't broken any rules.
We go again, a load of old cobblers from the lot who backed Boris for actual law breaking, and now they want to clutch their pearls over Keir Starmer hiring a voice coach. I mean, give over. I mean, let's get this straight. Like, while the Tories were having lockdown raves, you know, Keir Starmer was polishing up on his public speaking. I mean, that sounds like proper villainous behaviour to me. I I mean, if that's their smoking gun, then they're in worse shape than we thought. And let's get this straight. I mean, it's not about the rules, is it? It's about desperation, and they've got nothing real on him. So they're scraping the bottom of the barrel. And meanwhile, those guys are putting actual COVID lockdown breakers in the Lords. You've got Lord Bailey there. I mean, Nick Candy, are we going to bang him up too from the new Treasury reform? He was partying. I mean, let's be honest, like, having public speaking before you as a leader of the opposition, it's hardly committing a crime, innit? And that's what the police have found. Nothing to worry about there.
There we go. Once again, nothing to see with Mr. Non-Stick Starmer. Now we're giving you now 2 chances to win in our latest Great British Giveaway, as we have 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Here's the details that you need to enter.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British Giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, still to come, we'll bring you all the latest news on the shooting in the Adult Education Centre over in Sweden. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lately, it's getting much better. The people getting more educated in terms of overall well-being of the skin health, rather than temporary aesthetic treatments. Because most of the treatments in aesthetic, it doesn't change the texture of the skin. It just gives like volumetric result or remove the wrinkles temporarily.
So what are the most popular treatments that people are after?
According to a statistic report, first is anti-wrinkle, then dermal filler, then energy-based device. Yeah. But lately, biostimulators also became very popular. And
what do you mean by biostimulators?
Biostimulator, any substance that can change the texture of the skin, or like it will lead to postpone the aging process, or proliferate more collagen, increase the elasticity of the skin, such as polynucleotide or exosome, or different vitamins and minerals in the form of mesotherapy considered as a biostimulator.
Turkey's a particularly popular destination because the costs are so much lower. There have also been a lot of horror stories about what can happen when things go wrong, even people dying from post-surgery complications. What would you advise people?
Choose as a practitioner or surgeon very carefully, and never prioritize price over quality. This is your face after all, your body after all. And mistakes can be reversible. It can be irreversible, and sometimes it's not like a booking restaurant or hotel. It's a sensitive matter that can affect their confidence and skin and body for life. So they need to choose very wisely. They need to search what kind of methodology that particular surgeon, they perform the treatments. Are they using any safety tools?
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to 426 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, police have now confirmed that 5 people have been shot at an adult education centre in Sweden. And joining us now with a full update is our Homeland Security editor, Mark White. Mark, what's the latest information we know? I believe that the assailant himself has been shot dead. Any number of casualties announced yet? And do we have any idea yet of the motive of the perpetrator?
The motive has not been revealed by the authorities as yet, but yes, the information that's been reported by local media is that a 35-year-old man was the armed suspect. You're looking at live shots there of Örebro and the scene on that school campus where this adult learning facility was located, a very large campus involving multiple schools, and in terms of the school there, it has, or at least the adult learning campus, they are in the process of trying to evacuate people from those various classrooms. We have obtained images which are distressing in nature, of course, for many of our audience, but this was video that was shot by one of the students out of the window at the moment where that gunfire erupted, and you can hear just how distressed she is, and you can hear, of course, the gunfire as well. Let's watch that.
Utan jacka, alltså jag går ut henne nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning, folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning! Oh my god!
You can hear the rapidity of the gunfire there. There have been reports that this was an automatic weapon. I think at the very least it was a semi-automatic weapon, given the rapid nature of the shots that were being fired there. We've seen images of at least one body that is lying in an open doorway, and although the police have not confirmed fatalities as yet, they are talking about 5, now 6 people taken to an area hospital. Local media in Sweden, including the national broadcaster SVT, is talking about several fatalities and up to 15 people that may have been injured. Well, for a number of hours, people have been stuck in their classrooms. We've also got video to show you of one of those classrooms where you can hear the alarm bells sounding and people just stuck in the classrooms, not really knowing what was going on. Let's have a look at that. Well, the Swedish Prime Minister has described this as an intensely painful day for Sweden. Extra resources have been sent to this area, which is about 125 miles west of the Swedish capital, Stockholm. We understand as well that this 35-year-old gunman's home address is now being searched. There are reports of the sound of an explosion that took place at that address. Now, that may just have been the entry teams, those armed officers blowing the locks of the door to get into that premises. But no more details about the attacker, except the reports as confirmed by the police that they believe he was among those suffering gunshot injuries.
And Mark White, as we understand it, this is an adult education centre for those over 20 years of age, but it does teach primary and secondary level education to immigrants and also some with intellectual disabilities. And Mark White, there are a large number of guns within Sweden. Of course, it's famed for its hunting. I understand there are 2 million legal guns in the country, something like 300,000 extra illegal guns. It would be pretty easy for anybody with malintent, Mark White, to get their hands on a firearm if they so chose.
Yes, that's true. I mean, you know, it is a large country. It's the largest Scandinavian country, and in terms of the sort of the geography. There are lots of forests and areas to hunt. There are, it is a popular pastime hunting, and as you say, because of that, there are very significant numbers, over 2 million firearms in circulation. But historically, given the number of firearms in circulation, there was never a very significant issue with gun crime in that country when you equate it to the number of guns that are actually available. Things have changed in recent years with violent crime, very significant in multiple forms. Gun crime, knife crime, even bomb attacks that have taken place in Sweden as well. But in terms of guns in circulation, has to be said, anywhere really in Europe and in the European Union in particular, you've got open borders and you've got guns that are circulating from as far back as the Balkans War that were then brought into the European mainland, fell into the hands of criminals and are widely in circulation. We see it and we see them used in attacks constantly in the likes of France and Germany and other countries. Now, of course, Sweden, we don't know whether this was a legally held firearm or not, but a terrible incident that unfolded earlier today, a mass shooting at this educational facility, an adult educational facility within a wider school campus.
Thank you, Mark White, for that very comprehensive update there on the shooting in Sweden. Thank you, Mark White. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Moving on, still a lot more to come between now and 5 o'clock, including, is it time to name and shame teenage killers? Of course, in the wake of that tragic stabbing at a school in Sheffield, a 15-year-old killed by another 15-year-old. But first, here's your news headlines, and it's Aaron Armstrong.
Very good afternoon to you. Our top stories. As you have just been hearing, at least 5 people have been shot at a school in Sweden. 4 have undergone surgery. 1 remains critically injured. A warning viewers may find the following footage distressing.
Utan jacka. Alltså jag går ut henne nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning. Folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning!
A place at campus Risbergska in the central city of Örebro, which is attended by students aged 20 and above. Nearby facilities were locked down before being evacuated. This footage shows students hiding under desks while the attack took place. And live pictures from Sweden. Police say the suspect in the attack is a man. They believe he is also amongst the injured people who've been taken to hospital, although we don't know his identity or age, or indeed any potential motive. A major security operation is continuing. Police say they believe the imminent danger at the campus is over. A panel of international medical experts has concluded Lucy Letby did not murder any babies after outlining significant new evidence. They believe bad medical care and natural causes led to their deaths. Letby is serving 15 whole-life prison sentences after being convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others in 2015 and 2016. Well, Letby's defence lawyers have announced they have asked for her case to be investigated as a miscarriage of justice. The chair of the panel, Dr. Xu Li, has said there are alternative explanations for each of her convictions. China's retaliated following the imposition by the United States of 10% tariffs on all of its imported goods. Not long after the US taxes on China began, China said it was imposing counter tariffs, 10% on American crude oil and agricultural machinery and 15% on coal and liquefied natural gas. Donald Trump made that announcement last night, though that he will delay imposing tariffs on Mexico and Canada after both countries agreed a border deal with Trump. Global markets, though, slumped in the wake of Trump's announcements. We're not sure yet when or if tariffs will be imposed on the EU or indeed the UK. Government's announced a major trial aiming to transform breast cancer screening with artificial intelligence, with almost 700,000 women expected to take part. It's hoped the technology will help specialists catch cancer earlier, as well as freeing up radiologists in a bid to slash waiting times. According to Breast Cancer Now, around 55,000 women and 400 men are diagnosed with cancer every year. And the actor and comedian Brian Murphy has died at the age of 92. He was best known for his role in the 1970s British sitcoms Man About the House and also George and Mildred. He passed away at his home in Kent on Sunday morning. His friend and agent, Thomas Bowington, described him as joyful and profoundly good-hearted. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me just after 5 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Colder weather ahead. Yes, it is pretty mild out there today, but it's going to turn quite a bit colder with the return of nighttime frosts through the rest of the week. But it is going to be largely dry through the rest of the week. Not dry out there today thanks to this weather front. It's been slowly creeping across the country, providing some pretty soggy conditions in the west. And for this evening, it'll turn damp across East Anglia and the southeast, but should be out of the way by midnight. Lots of showers coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, some snow on the hills. Most of England and Wales dry and clear through the night, so it will be a colder night than last night, with temperatures in towns and cities down to 2 or 3 degrees, a touch of frost in the countryside. As we go into Wednesday, though, yes, a bit chilly, but generally good-looking day. There'll still be some clouds and a few showers northwest England, and particularly into western Scotland, where there'll still be a fairly brisk breeze, but generally the wind's easing. Much of eastern Scotland starting fine and sunny. Same goes for Northern Ireland. 1 or 2 showers will drift in on the breeze, as they will across northwest England, maybe even West Wales and southwest England. But most of England and Wales will be dry and fine and sunny, and many places will stay that way through the day. A bit of cloud will bubble up here and there. There's the small chance of the odd shower drifting into Wales across Northern Ireland. Certainly showers will keep going in western Scotland, but for the vast majority, it's a fine winter's day on Wednesday. Bit of a chilly start, and then temperatures come the afternoon lower than today, so it will feel colder than today, but these numbers pretty much bang on average for this time of the year. It will turn quite cold quite quickly tomorrow evening. Still a few showers in the far northwest, but otherwise dry, long clear spells. And you can see that blue hue on the map of frost forming pretty rapidly. Thursday's then another fine and sunny day with a bit more cloud spilling in for Friday and Saturday, and for all of us, turning colder.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Cheshire, the M6 northbound is partly blocked after a breakdown. It's between junction 17 at Crewe and 18 for Middlewich and the A54. In Staffordshire, the M6 southbound is partly blocked after a collision at junction 12, the turn-off at Gailey and the A5 Watling Street. In Kent, the M20 is blocked coastbound after a collision. It's blocked from junction 3 for the M26 along to junction 4 for Leybourne and the A228. Long delays on the approach there. In Berkshire, the M4 eastbound is partly blocked for repairs, and they're taking place just after junction 13 for Newbury and the A34, so do expect some minor delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:39 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News for you. Now, this has become a national issue for our country. In April, a 14-year-old girl stabbed 2 teachers and a pupil at a school in Wales. In May, a 17-year-old boy was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a stabbing at a school in Sheffield. And now a 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder following the fatal stabbing of another teenage boy aged 15 at a school in Sheffield. More and more teenagers are involved in stabbing incidents, particularly in British schools. And the question today is, should teenage murder suspects be named when charged? Should they lose their right to anonymity to help stamp out the cancer of knife crime? Well, let's bring in now a great friend of the show and the learned barrister and writer, Stephen Barrett. Stephen, welcome to the show. Now, we all understand sometimes with great sense of exasperation, the law is the law and the identity of minors are protected in the eyes of the law. But in order for justice to be seen to be done, is there any leeway in changing this where the public interest is so overriding? And in particular, when we seem to have an epidemic of knife crime, could naming teenage assailants help to stamp out the cancer of knife crime? What are your thoughts?
So, yes. I mean, the first thing to do is to say that we're not talking about any specific case. Very sadly, there are far too many incidents for us to just focus on a specific case. So we're talking generally about this epidemic of knife crime and knife violence. It's really an epidemic of anger and aggression. And we don't know why it's breaking out, and I don't have magical powers, so I'm not going to speculate on that. But we can always change the law. The law is not in charge of any of us. It's not superior to us. It's not some magical force. It's not a replacement for God. You know, it's not in charge. We could name teenage suspects of knife crime if we wanted to. The obvious reason to do it is not vengeance or being cruel. It's because human beings respond quite well to shame, and shame is a good way of getting human beings to stop doing bad things. You'd need to do other things, a package of measures. You'd need to stop and search to find the knives. You'd need to have serious punishment if people are found with knives. And yes, naming them would be part of that punishment process, because a lot of their parents would be presumably absolutely horrified to discover that they were being named in the press and connected with, you know, carrying a knife or doing anything else. And that would seem to me to be a rational way of doing it. Simply having a rule that you can't, you always grant them anonymity. It's a nice idea. It's a kind idea. It's probably an idea from when things were an awful lot calmer. And I do think we can change the law based upon how society is. You know, society is, when it's in a good way and all nice and calm. I remember the 90s when everything was so, the Radiohead lyric is that I wish something would happen. We were all so happy we were bored. You know, but at the moment, things are in a very bad way. So there's nothing wrong with changing the legal system to adapt to the period that we're in. And the worst thing of all is if a young person's life is lost. I mean, that none of us want that. I'm old and middle-aged now, and it breaks my heart to see these little, you know, what to my eyes are children, and their lives and their potential and their future snuffed out over nothing. And it's just such a tragic waste that it's perfectly rational to change the law to try and stop this.
And Stephen, has something else changed as well? And that is, not only are teenagers now maturing earlier, they're getting stronger, they're getting bigger, they're getting taller, and they are coming from cultures perhaps overseas that don't share our cultural values, perhaps in countries where they have a much stricter legal system. And does that, all of this together, impart the fact that children are growing up sooner? They're growing up in different cultural and legal environments. They come to Britain, it's like they can get away with whatever they want. And as a consequence, the law's an ass. The law's a joke. There isn't that consequence, and therefore we have a sticky situation where it seems often that it is those who are killed who find themselves on the receiving end of the law, and those who are the killers who find themselves protected.
Well, that's all going to have to change, because ultimately the public won't settle for that. You know, one of the great things about our multicultural country is that we do actually all agree on certain things, like keeping children safe. So there'll be a huge, you know, range of support for a government that wanted to toughen the laws and protect children, as long as it's made clear that's what's happening. You know, I think we should just respond to reality rather than have lofty ideals. Another one that's completely broken, Martin, is sentencing for possession of paedophilic images and child abuse. That needs fixing, but the country doesn't want that. They're far too lightly sentenced. And it's no answer to say, oh, well, the sentencing council are experts, so we've got to not punish people. People want people punished. I want people punished. Let's change the system to reflect what the public mood is. That's democracy. There's nothing wrong with democracy. It's not a dirty word. It's actually the best form of government. So, you know, it's not something to be ashamed of. And I think in recent times, we've become far too reliant upon the idea of expertise and the idea that clever people know the best answer and ordinary people must shut up. And we've ended up in quite a silly country because we're not punishing people for possession of paedophilic images, which is absolutely outrageous. And we've got a knife crime epidemic where we're losing our children. So this has to stop. Let's grow up.
OK, common sense and calm and composed as ever. Thank you very much for helping us make sense of what is often a crazy situation. That's the barrister and writer, the learned Stephen Barrett. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi there. If you're looking for some winter sun, actually the Mediterranean's the place to find it. Plenty of sunny skies during the next few days, although Greece has seen some heavy rain, and that's clearing on Wednesday, followed by windy conditions through Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. Italy through the Balearics into Spain, Portugal and the Canaries. Indeed, plenty of sunny skies, and it remains that way until the end of the week, when it does turn increasingly unsettled.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, you know I like an auction.
Yes.
And I've bought some strange things at auction before you have as well, haven't you, Eamon?
Yeah, well, Ellie would throw this in the bin that you're coming up with now.
How about this? Admiral Lord Nelson's hair.
No.
Cut. I mean, is this a bit spooky? Cut as he lay dying during the Battle of Trafalgar, so someone's gone, oh, we'll just have a little bit of that there. In 1805, is on sale in Jersey, and it's a little cup. How much would you pay for the hair?
No, nothing. It would go in the bin, straight in the bin.
What? Even what? Nelson, that's very disrespectful to the British culture and heritage.
I think it's disrespectful that he lay there dying, and someone thought, we'll take a quick strip
Well,
of hair.
maybe they just had. Maybe they thought, you know, because there's obviously the famous painting, isn't there, of the Battle of Trafalgar? Maybe they thought we'll give him a quick haircut, and then they kept their £15,000, 15 grand.
Where's the hair come from? What part of the body?
His head, Eamon.
Well, it could be his underarm. I don't know. You know, it depends.
All right, let me have a little look.
You would bid
it's very
more.
curly. I think it's his head. It's his head. What?
You would bid more for his head than, say, his underarm.
Well, I think so. Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah.
Or anywhere else.
I would hope so. A little less whiffy there, the head hair. And there it is. And it's in a little pot.
No.
And the only way you can probably find out is if you DNA test it, I guess. It's definitely his.
Whoever pays for that is bonkers.
Well,
that's creepy.
I was seriously tempted to make a bid for a toupee, not for me, but as worn by John Wayne.
John Wayne's wig?
Yeah.
Why?
Wow.
Why?
Well, why I didn't get it was my wife said to me, that is not coming into the house.
Well, she's right. She's right.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, meanwhile, a gun amnesty is underway for particular types of weapons, with owners across Britain being urged to hand them into police stations. Now, tests found that 4 brands of Turkish blank-firing guns can easily be converted to fire live ammunition, meaning that they are now illegal under the Firearms Act in the United Kingdom. Now, having become popular with criminal gangs, the amnesty is designed to take them out of circulation. And our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson has this story.
OK, so on the table in front of us, we have top venting blank firearms.
This month, owners of specific blank firearms are being urged to hand them in to police stations. The specified brands are the Turkish guns Rite, Ekol, Sionic and Blow. And the National Crime Agency say they've been used in at least 4 killings in the UK in the last 2 years. Tests on the weapons found they can be easily converted to fire live ammunition using common DIY tools and without the need for specialist skills. Therefore, they're illegal under the Firearms Act. Detective Chief Superintendent Peter Henrik is head of the National Ballistics Intelligence Service.
And this is an example of another one you can purchase, which is, again, a top venting blank firearm. You cannot discharge a projectile. However, after the criminals have converted, this is the same gun converted. You can still see the blue patent of this, but now it's capable of shooting a projectile and causing injury and death.
An amnesty for owners of the weapons is taking place until the 28th of February, meaning they can be handed in without the risk of prosecution. However, possession of one of the guns after this period could mean a prison sentence of 10 years. Assistant Chief Constable Tim Metcalf is from the National Police Chiefs Council.
We're seeing the prevalence of the Turkish weapons being used in crime more and more. So last year, 86% of criminal or recovered converted bank firearms were within those four makes. We believe there are thousands out there. One operation alone at the tail end of last year recovered over 400 of these weapons from one organised crime group. We did the testing just before Christmas. We found that they were readily convertible and therefore moving quickly with this amnesty to remove them from public circulation and deny criminals access to these weapons so that they're not able to convert them and commit serious criminal offences with them.
Importers and traders have been told to stop selling them, and Border Force are now on alert and will seize further importations of the specified models. Police say removing these guns from circulation is a significant step and better protects the public. But with these guns so embedded in organised crime, what impact will the amnesty have? Jack Carson, GB News.
Great package there from Jack Carson. You know, there's no place for these firearms on British streets, particularly after what we're seeing happening in Sweden today. These firearms can very, very be easily converted. We do not want the cancer of gun crime on our streets growing. We have enough problem with the cancer of knife crime. And talking of which, loads of you have been getting in touch throughout the show to have your say. Let's read a few of them out now. The top topic today, of course, are the perceptions of two-tiered justice for Sir Keir Starmer breaking those lockdown rules with his vocal coach, who was called a key worker. Linda says this: Sir Keir Starmer needs to be investigated over that vocal coach. It's the abject hypocrisy that gets me after what he did to Boris Johnson. Boris was hounded out of office for similar. How come the same rules don't appear to apply to our Prime Minister? Now, it's a fair point. Margaret adds this, however. She says, I don't care about whether Starmer saw that woman or not. Lockdown was ages ago. It's time to move on. And Dave says this: politics needs to be cleaned up quick. I have no trust in any of them anymore. And James quickly says this: if Boris went, then Keir needs to go too. There cannot be different rules for different prime ministers. And I'm getting waved at by a man out there, Lee Anderson, trying to put me off, and told which he is next, because Keir Starmer is under huge pressure over those allegations of lockdown rules being broken. Lee Anderson is ready to steam in. He'll be here shortly with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's news channel. But now it's time for your weather.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Colder weather ahead. Yes, it is pretty mild out there today, but it's going to turn quite a bit colder with the return of nighttime frosts through the rest of the week. But it is going to be largely dry through the rest of the week. Not dry out there today thanks to this weather front. It's been slowly creeping across the country, providing some pretty soggy conditions in the west. And for this evening, it'll turn damp across East Anglia and the southeast, but should be out of the way by midnight. Lots of showers coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, some snow on the hills. Most of England and Wales dry and clear through the night, so it will be a colder night than last night, with temperatures in towns and cities down to 2 or 3 degrees, touch of frost in the countryside. As we go into Wednesday, though, yes, a bit chilly, but generally good-looking day. There'll still be some clouds and a few showers northwest England, and particularly into western Scotland, where there'll still be a fairly brisk breeze, but generally the wind's easing. Much of eastern Scotland starting fine and sunny. Same goes for Northern Ireland. 1 or 2 showers will drift in on the breeze, as they will across northwest England, maybe even West Wales and southwest England. But most of England and Wales will be dry, fine and sunny, and many places will stay that way through the day. A bit of cloud will bubble up here and there. There's the small chance of the odd shower drifting into Wales across Northern Ireland. Certainly showers will keep going in western Scotland, but for the vast majority, it's a fine winter's day on Wednesday. Bit of a chilly start, and then temperatures come the afternoon lower than today, so it will feel colder than today, but these numbers pretty much bang on average for this time of the year. It will turn quite cold quite quickly tomorrow evening. Still a few showers in the far northwest, but otherwise dry, long clear spells. And you can see that blue hue on the map of frost forming pretty rapidly. Thursday's then another fine and sunny day with a bit more cloud spilling in for Friday and Saturday, and for all of us, turning colder.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Greater Manchester, the M62 westbound is partly blocked after a collision between junction 12 for the M60 and junction 11 for Birchwood. In Staffordshire, the M6 southbound, that's partly blocked by a breakdown just by junction 12 for Gailey and the A5. It's blocking the inside lane of 4 there. In Kent, delays on the M25 anti-clockwise. That's partly blocked after a collision just by junction 5, the turn-off for the M26 and Sevenoaks. And in Devon and Exeter, the A30 is partly blocked westbound. That's after a collision just by the roundabout for the M5, the Oakhampton turn-off at junction 31. So do expect some delays on the approach.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, the Prime Minister is under huge and growing pressure over allegations he broke lockdown rules during COVID after he declared his voice coach to be an essential worker who broke strict tier rules. Well, Starmer hounded Boris out of office over a slice of cake, but insists this time, of course, that no rules were broken. As the storm clouds gather for Starmer, I'll be joined by Lee Anderson and Matthew Stadlen for a good old ding-dong. And a Freedom of Information request has revealed that West Yorkshire Police spent an astonishing £1.3 million last year on DEI. Of course, that's diversity, equality and inclusivity posts. But that is the equivalent of 44 bobbies on the beat. Is it time to do a Trump and kick DEI out of our police forces? And police have warned that the danger is not over after at least 5 people have been shot at a school for adults in Sweden. And we'll bring you all the latest developments on this breaking story. That's all coming in your next hour. No rules were broken. How many times have we heard that coming from Sir Keir Starmer? It was the same with Free Gear Keir. Nothing to see here. Getting free suits from Lord Ali, passes for glasses. Nothing to see here. Sabir Korma, nothing to see here during that lager-fuelled lash-up for the Labour Party. Nothing whatsoever to see. And there's nothing to see now when his vocal coach was declared a key worker. A vocal coach, a key worker. Do they think we're silly? But still, nothing to see here. Once again for the man I'm now calling non-stick Starmer. Nothing ever seems to stick. The same rules, the same things he threw at Boris Johnson when he hounded him out of Downing Street. Nothing to see here for non-stick Starmer. Get in touch. We've got Lee Anderson in the studio and Matthew Stadlen. We're going to have a good old ding-dong about this any moment now. Is it time for the Prime Minister to be hung by his own petard? The same rules, the same moral high horse that he rode Boris Johnson out of town on. Get in touch. GBNews.com/your say. But now it's your headlines, and it's Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. It's 2 minutes past 5. Our top stories. As you've been hearing, at least 5 people have been shot at a school in Sweden. 4 have undergone surgery. 1 remains critically injured. A warning, viewers may find the following footage distressing.
Utan jacka. Alltså jag går ner till henne nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning. Folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning! Oh my god.
The shooting took place at a school called Campus Risbergska in the central city of Örebro, which is attended by students aged 20 and above. Now, nearby facilities were locked down before being evacuated. This footage shows students hiding under desks while the attack took place. And security presence remains on the scene. Live pictures here from Sweden. Now, police have released some details. They say the suspect is a man. They believe he is amongst the injured people who've been taken to hospital, although they have not released his age or identity, or indeed any potential motive. The Swedish Prime Minister, Ulf Kristersson, says this is a very painful day for the country. A panel of international medical experts has concluded Lucy Letby did not murder any babies after outlining significant new evidence. They believe bad medical care and natural causes led to the deaths. Letby's serving 15 whole-life prison sentences after being convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others in 2015 and 2016. Well, the case is to be reviewed by a commission that investigates potential miscarriages of justice after Letby's lawyers applied for her case to be investigated. Chair of the panel, Dr. Shu Lee, says there are alternative explanations for each of her convictions.
We did not find any murders. In all cases, death or injury were due to natural causes or just bad medical care. In our opinion, the medical evidence doesn't support murder in any of these babies, just natural causes and bad medical care.
The former Children's Commissioner for England, Baroness Anne Longfield, says knife crime involving teenagers is a national crisis that needs a national response. Police are continuing to question a teenager over the fatal stabbing of 15-year-old Harvey Wilgoose at All Saints Catholic School in Sheffield yesterday. Flowers, candles and balloons have been placed on a wall outside the school. Sheffield United fans say they will pay tribute to him at their next home match. Meanwhile, Stop and Search data has revealed in the year to the end of June 2024, there were almost 20,000 possessions of a knife or offensive weapon in England and Wales, resulting in a caution or conviction, with children the perpetrators in 18% of those cases.
I lived in America for some time, and they had even worse instances of school shootings. And it's such a tragedy. It traumatizes local communities because parents then have to send their kids to school the very next day or the week after. And it's always going to be in the back of your mind, can it happen another time at school or another local school? I just worry that we always think national government's got the answer, that somehow if we put some people in Whitehall to think about it, the answer will come. Actually, maybe we should just make sure that head teachers have that power. They know what's going on in their local school. They know where there may be a risk. Maybe we should give more power to people who are, on the front line, closer than expecting national policies to be the answer.
China has announced retaliatory tariffs on American goods as US tariffs of 10% on Chinese goods come into effect. China says it will impose 15% taxes on coal and liquefied natural gas and 10% on American crude oil and agricultural machinery. Now, Donald Trump's threats of tariffs against Canada and Mexico were paused for 30 days yesterday following negotiations. Trump is expected to speak with the Chinese President Xi Jinping on the phone a little later today. He's also due to meet the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House to discuss the latest situation, including the Gaza ceasefire and the crisis in the Middle East. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner is to team up with Conservative Dominic Grieve to form a new council on Islam and free speech. It's expected to have 16 members who will focus on what they say is a rise in Islamophobia. Ms Rayner, though, is facing a backlash on other fronts today after giving 6 councils, which serve more than 2 million people, permission to increase council tax beyond the established annual threshold of 5%. And she's warned of further tough decisions to rebuild and stabilise local government. Finally, people who want to buy weight loss jabs online will face stricter checks. The General Pharmaceutical Council has told online pharmacies a patient questionnaire will no longer be enough, nor will an email, chat, or indeed people sending in photos of themselves. Instead, checks on someone who wants jabs like Wegovy will include verifying the person's BMI in person, through video consultation, or through medical records. And if pharmacists don't stick to those guidelines, they could face investigation. That's it for the moment. I'll be back with more just after 5:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Aaron. Now, before we move on to domestic policies, we have a breaking news line for you now, and that is 10 people have now been confirmed as dead in that shooting at a Swedish adult education centre at the school in Örebro. 10 now confirmed dead and as many as 15 injured. 10 now confirmed dead at that mass shooting. We'll have more on that breaking news situation throughout the show as details come in. Now, moving back to Britain now and domestic politics. And Sir Keir Starmer has denied breaking lockdown rules after his voice coach appears to have travelled more than 50 miles between lockdown tiers to meet him.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key word?
And that was Sir Keir Starmer there, exiting stage left sharply. It's Brussels last night. Didn't want to face the music over those allegations. Now, do you find that convincing? Because just a few days before Keir Starmer met with his voice coach, he was calling for harder, tougher, stricter lockdown measures.
Easing the restrictions, I think, is going to be the next big mistake for the Prime Minister. And he, rather than sort of saying, well, I'm not going to change the rules, it's over to you, families and communities, you take responsibility. That's not the act of a Prime Minister. The Prime Minister should say, I'll take the difficult decisions, not hand them over to individuals. We can see that the tiered system isn't working in the way the Prime Minister promised. More people are going into the higher tiers, so it's not strong enough.
Well, that was Keir clamping down on tiers before he was called two-tier Keir. Does that sound like a man that's happy to have an actress around for him to polish his vocal cords? Now, let's not forget, Sir Keir Starmer spent months hounding Boris Johnson to resign.
Game is up. You cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker. And it's time to pack his bags. Only then can the government function again. Only then can the rot be carved out. Only then can we restore the dignity of that great office and the democracy that it represents.
Now, meanwhile, let's take a look at his masked voice coach, and that's Leonie Mellinger there. She put this tweet out in June 2020. The plot thickens because she called for Dominic Cummings to be investigated for his eye test trip to Durham. You couldn't make it up. She's swanning around tears from between Brighton and London, but she wants Dominic Cummings to be investigated back in the day. Now, of course, Cummings wasn't the only one to take a trip to Durham. Have a butcher at this, because, of course, Keir Starmer and his deputy Angela Rayner were spotted having a lager-fuelled lash-up with the Labour Party, a cheeky beer and a curry there, although, of course, they didn't break any rules. Of course, that's the common theme. But the investigation into the takeaway earned the Prime Minister this glorious nickname.
Sabir Korma, Mr. Speaker, is currently failing to hold himself to the same high standards that he demanded of me.
Sabir Korma. Well, today, Sir Keir Starmer insists, obviously, once again, that no rules were broken. But is it starting to feel that no matter what the indiscretion, different rules simply apply to the man his critics are calling two-tier Sir Keir Starmer? Well, I'm joined now in the studio to discuss this by GB News political editor Chris Hope and of course, the Reform UK MP for Ashfield and the Chief Whip Lee Anderson and the political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. Chris, let's start with the allegations. Quite simply, let's not forget that Sir Keir Starmer wanted a national inquiry into Dominic Cummings' eye test. He wanted a national inquiry into Boris Johnson's wallpaper, but there's been never a single foot put wrong. Free gear Keir, all those endless freebies from Lord Ali, nothing to see here. Sabir Korma, that lager-fuelled lash-up in Durham, nothing to see here. Different tiers for different Keirs when his vocal coach swung between tier 3 in Brighton and tier 4 in London. Nothing to see here. And I'm just saying to you, this guy feels like non-stick Starmer. Nothing he ever does sticks. Is there a different set of rules for the Prime Minister, and if so, why?
I'm getting dreadful playback in my head of all those years of tears and the rest. I mean, Sir Keir Starmer was investigated by Durham Police about the lager-fuelled lash-up, as you describe it, and found not guilty, nothing wrong there. He did call, of course, for inquiry into Dominic Cummings. He was, of course, the PM's the chief advisor at that point, and why not? He led the opposition. As things stand, let's remind viewers, and this is what is the prosecution charge here. On the Christmas Eve 2020, the PM, as was the former, before he was PM, Sir Keir Starmer gave a statement about the Brexit deal agreed by Boris Johnson. To prepare for that, Leonie Mellinger came to see him in his office and gave him advice and coaching on how to deliver it, helping with speech preparation according to number 10 Downing Street. The rules allowed people to go to work, number 10 say. She was preparing Keir Starmer for a speech he gave that day, they say, for a televised press conference. She was helping with speech preparation. She'd been helping him since 2017 to 2021, Leonie Mellinger. She had key worker status, the government says. And that is the point. By travelling from Brighton, tier 3, to London, tier 4, was she breaching the rules? Well, yes. Was she? Was she? Not if she was a Keir worker. There you go. Key worker, she wasn't. And that's the point. Now, both Keir Starmer and Leonie Mellinger deny any wrongdoing. In fact, as you saw there in that press conference where I was at yesterday in Brussels, he said, of course not. all rules were followed. That is where we are.
Why is it that Keir Starmer's name lends itself to about every single insult?
We're to give a mess on this. But on a serious point, thank you for that, Chris. I'm going to turn to you, to my panel now. Seriously, do they think we're stupid to say that you can be a key worker if you're a voice coach? Right, key workers, lest we forget, doctors, nurses, teachers, social workers, judges, priests, people who work in food production, soldiers, coppers, prison staff, transport workers, posties, voice coaches have no place on that list. Matthew Sadler, they must think we're stupid to think we're going to swallow this. And why do they think different rules apply to Sir Keir Starmer? He'd have been frothing at the mouth had this been Boris Johnson.
Firstly, the tone you've taken and talking about beer-fuelled parties when, as Chris said, it was a beer, wasn't it? And he was cleared by Durham police. So the tone you're taking suggests that you're not taking it that seriously and you're having a bit too much fun and you're being a little bit naughty. First of all, on the rules were very serious. They were serious. I took them so seriously, I didn't touch another human being for 7 months, to the point that my friends wanted to stage an intervention.
I can believe that.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. So I took it very seriously. Why are people raking over this now when we've got challenges on so many fronts, how to deal with Trump's tariffs, what to do with the EU?
Is the war.
Yes, and that's because Starmer, like me, did seem to take the rules very seriously, and rightly so, when they were in place, and so he set himself a high bar. Was he partying at this particular time? No, he literally cancelled a Christmas party for Labour staffers, while Number 10 was partying like it was 1999. So that's the first point. The second point is it critical whether or not she was a key worker? I looked at Boris Johnson's statement that he made about Tier 4 in late December 2020, and in that statement he said, you must work at home. This is outside, I think, of the key worker issue. You must work at home unless you can't. And that does give Starmer, on this particular case, if this is really going to develop into a major story and he's going to have to answer it straight up, it gives him a bit of wriggle room.
You could use Zoom, though, Matthew.
No, and I was going to come to that. So you could use Zoom.
People getting cancer diagnoses via Zoom.
Hang on. You could use Zoom, but could you do your job as effectively if you are trying to coach the leader of the opposition to speak via Zoom? Probably not.
OK, Lee Anderson, you're shaking your head on the end there.
Well,
Come on,
we just had 2 minutes of rubbish again from Matthew Stadler. I mean, a fair play to having the backbone to come in to defend this nonsense, but he's up to his neck in it, Matthew. You know this, we all know that. And just this morning, guys, I had a constituent contact me to say that her late husband, on this date, was in hospital with some advanced forms of cancer. He's no longer with us, sadly, and his friends and his family and his loved ones were not allowed to go into that hospital ward and give him the love and respect that man deserved. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer, he was calling for harsher lockdowns. He was, this vocal coach, as you call her. I find it, as a politician, actually embarrassing that this man who's now the Prime Minister of our country has got to have lessons in how to speak.
Margaret Thatcher did. Lee Anderson,
Matthew,
Margaret Thatcher, a hero of your former party. Margaret Thatcher, coach.
This is not the Matthew Stadler show. You've had your 2 minutes.
You're just talking
nonsense.
Let
me have my 2 minutes. Well, that's up for debate. Is a vocal coach a key worker? Absolutely not. It's absolutely rubbish. And if he is that desperate to get coaching for his voice, two things here. I would say, one, it's a waste of money. And at the end of the day, as you'll see later, it's come out of it talking like a Dalek, a boring Dalek at that, Martin. And, it's not a key work. He could have done this on Zoom or by Teams meeting. People were getting diagnosed over the telephone, over Zoom. This is just a nonsense. I think there's more to this story than meets the eye.
And isn't that the point, though, to Chris and to Matthew? This is about the public believing there's equity of application of rules, of laws, of regulation. Call them what you want. And if it was enough to hound Boris Johnson out over a slice of cake, is it not enough to hound the Prime Minister out over having a gargle with a voice coach?
Well, 1 minute you want to minimise what Johnson did, and the next minute you want to hammer Starmer.
No,
so if we're talking about... But if we're talking... Were you calling for Boris Johnson to be sacked over, as you put it, a piece of cake?
What I think is immaterial. I happen to think that a lot of the lockdown rules were absurd, but I'm not the lawmaker, and I'm not...
But you're minimising what Johnson did. There was widespread partying. Yes, there was widespread partying in Number 10. Your point about your constituent, I totally take it. And I need to be consistent as well, because I was appalled by what Number 10 got up to, and people went through horrors. I had a mental health crisis myself, which paled into insignificance compared to people who were not allowed to go and watch their children be born or be with their loved ones when they died. Of course, it was a bizarre and crazy time, but given it was bizarre and crazy, people in senior positions, particularly the Prime Minister and also the Leader of the Opposition, needed to obey the rules. Boris Johnson didn't. We know that. The police have told us that. His staff, or many of them, didn't. But we know that.
But was the investigation led by... Hang on, was the investigation led by Sue Gray, who's by the way, has now got the old elbow. She's gone, the old Spanish archer. She led the investigation, right, into Boris Johnson, a politically motivated investigation.
The police gave him a fine, Martin. Right? The police don't work for Sue Gray. No, but be clear about that. The police gave him a fine. The question here is, did Keir Starmer break the rules? Very probably not. Oh, but was he partying? There are different tiers of breaking the rules anyway.
Who would want to have a party? One question, Matthew. Should there be an investigation of some sort to come clean?
Sake, no.
Why not? Because there were demands for... There was one into Durham. He was cleared. Why not have one into this and clear in this way?
Look, if someone reports this to the police, then the police can decide, the relevant authority would be the Met Police, presumably, could decide whether there's a case to answer. If there isn't, for God's sake, let the man get on and deal with the various crises facing our country.
Gentlemen, now, Lee Anderson, you faced some serious allegations earlier today. And I want to set them straight now. We've got video to play, Lee. Let's have a look.
Morning. Got the old cap back. Well, I bought a new one, so cheating really, but have a look at this. Well, there you go. So I'm on my way to work, but I've got an admission to make. I need to quell some rumours that's been circulating. I do not, and I repeat, I've never had voice coaching lessons in my life. There you go. Why would I spend thousands of pounds to end up speaking like a Dalek?
Well, Lee, it's good to clear that one up.
I'm surprised, Lee Anderson, you haven't had voice coaching.
Yeah,
you
speak so beautifully, Lee. You know what I speak like, guys? I speak like the people I represent up in the capital of common sense, which is Ashfield. And if you ever pass in, Matthew, it's junction 28 on the M1. It's about 2 minutes off there. And you lefties, you and Chopper, you'll be in for a rude awakening.
I'm not a lefty, Lee Anderson.
You'll be for a rude awakening. Come into some of my working men's clubs in Ashfield.
I'd love to. Is that appropriate?
Yes, I will invite you.
I will come with you. By the way, I go up to Nottingham to watch the cricket at Trent Bridge, one of the most beautiful grounds in the country.
Should be there Saturday, 7-0. Anyway, gentlemen, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Lee Anderson, Matthew Stedman, Chris Hope. Always a pleasure and never a chore. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Now, moving on. The NHS is reportedly refusing to publish the full Nottingham killer report over patient confidentiality. Of course, that's Valerio Calacane, who killed 3. More on that next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Business News Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
According to a report from the RAC, many drivers see speed limits as a target rather than anything else. More than 50% of us think it's acceptable to break the speed limit.
So this morning we're asking, is it time to increase the motorway speed limit?
Let's talk to automotive journalists Danny Kelly and Steve Fowler. Gents, what a pleasure to speak to you both in one go.
I think we should join many countries in the European Union that have 130 kilometres speed limit, which is around about 81 miles an hour. I drive to London on a weekly basis, and I think the roads are capable of handling higher speeds. I think unofficially the speed limit, without getting pulled over by the local police at the time, is probably around about 78, 80 miles an hour. If a Bobby's on the motorway doing 70 miles an hour, he wants you to overtake him. He wants the free-flowing of that motorway to continue.
So should we change 70 miles an hour? You know, if people are going 80 miles an hour, just stick to 70 miles an hour as a limit. Yes, you know, it's funny when you're driving along the motorway and there's a police car going at 70 and nobody wants to overtake. But if the average is 80, just leave it at 70.
All the gantries now are fitted with the modern signage where they can change the limit at will. We all know that. It's hard to get up to 70 half the time. So, actually, we could apply those rules, couldn't we, at 80 or even 90 miles an hour and say, well, if the weather's bad, let's reduce it. If the fog's bad, let's reduce it.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I hate to use this phrase, smart motorways, but they're the ones where you have the adjustable limits. They don't cover all of the motorway network, relatively small amount of the motorway network. It is a limit. You know, it's not a target, as I keep saying to my kids. God, they're bored of me saying that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:26. Now let's return now to that breaking news story that police have now confirmed that 10 people have been killed in that shooting at an adult education centre in Sweden. And for the latest now, I'm joined by Mark White, our Home and Security Editor. Mark White, what's the latest in this concerning story?
Well, we certainly believed from local media that the number of dead and injured was likely to be significantly higher than the 6 that the police had told us about that had been injured thus far. And now a second news conference confirming that around 10, it may be more than that, have been killed, and an unknown number of those have also been injured. They're still working to collate the number of injured at this stage. I think that should come as no surprise when we see that video that we've obtained shot by one of the students at this facility at the window as the gunfire was resounding around that particular campus. You could hear the rapidity of the shots. So let's just have a listen to that, but just a warning that these images are distressing.
Utan jacka, alltså jag går ner till henne nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning, folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning! Oh my god!
2 minutes.
Now, police have said that they are still working to establish the identities of those who have been killed and injured. The gunman, though, they believe is among those killed. According to the media in Sweden, he's a 35-year-old man from that local area. Police have surrounded and are searching that gunman's house. At this stage, they say the information they have doesn't point to terrorism as a motivation, but they haven't given any more details than that as to what on earth possessed this man to open fire on this campus.
Thank you, Mark White. 10 now confirmed dead. We're hearing at that Swedish Adult Education Centre. Thank you very much for that update, Mark White. Now moving back to Britain, the NHS is reportedly refusing to publish its full report into its failings in the treatment of the paranoid schizophrenic Bowel who carried out, of course, the Nottingham attacks because of patient confidentiality and data protection issues. And we can now speak with the founder of the 100 Families charity, Julian Hend. Julian, welcome to the show. This is a very, very disturbing situation. Of course, you've been on my show before. Your father was killed by somebody with mental psychopathy. That's the same as happened with Valdo Calacani. We know there are multiple failings of the health service, of the police service, and now it must be an additional trauma to the families of the deceased to find out the full report won't be published.
Yes, Martin. Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm actually hearing that the NHS has now done a U-turn. and that there's plans. It's not confirmed yet, but I'm hearing there's plans to publish the full reports. They were claiming today that patient confidentiality and legal data protection arrangements prevented them from publishing the full report, which was what the families have been wanting, because there's lots of detail in the report that is not in the executive summary, as I understand it. And you have to ask, well, what's changed? You know, is it only pressure by the families that has apparently made a change? We're still waiting to have that confirmed, but I'm hearing that it's likely that the full report now will be published. But I'm in contact with lots of families around the country where the full reports have been done into mental health related killings and they're not being published. The full reports, they publish like a 3-page or a small learning summary, but the full details of what happened, the full opportunity to learn from these things has not been published. And I've been talking to the NHS, I've been talking to the Department of Health to try and get this changed, because we need openness and transparency about these terrible incidents. We need to have public confidence that mental health services are effective and they're working well to protect patients, their families and the public.
And Judy, as you said, we can't speculate too much about the full disclosure or not, of either the full 200-page report or, as was quoted earlier today, a few dozen pages into the case of the triple killing of Valdo Kalakane, beg your pardon, of Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates. But irrespective of that, what is going on in these circumstances? Is this the NHS simply not wanting to admit in full to its own manifest failings? Is that what's happening here?
It's difficult to say. I mean, it's difficult to know. I've been documenting these cases now since my dad was killed in 2007. I've documented over 2,320 cases across the UK since the 90s. There have been, I counted them up. There's been over 600 inquiry reports. We know what the lessons are. We know that they have to monitor risk properly. We know they have to monitor medication compliance. They have to listen to families. They have to do joined up working. They have to liaise with other authorities. These are all lessons that have been known for 30 years, and they still keep coming up in inquiry reports. And that's what I fully expect to see tomorrow, when the whatever report that does appear does come out. So the question is are we learning from these tragedies? Are we preventing them from happening? And at the moment, I can't see that's happening.
OK, thank you very much for joining us. And that's the founder of the 100 Families charity, Julian Henn. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today. And just to let you know, there is a full press conference of the families of the deceased tomorrow. Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar, Ian Coates, who of course were killed by Valdo Kalakane. And I'm delighted to say that Emma Webber, who's the mother of Barnaby, who's appeared on the show before in one of the most incredibly moving interviews I think I've ever taken part in my 30 years in journalism, she'll be on the show tomorrow at 5 p.m. They'll be hoping that full report will be published. That's tomorrow, exclusively here on the Martin Daubney Show. Now, an NHS England spokesman said that these reports are published in line with the requirements of confidentiality and data protection legislation. There's loads more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including a police force has spent more than £1.3 million on diversity initiatives. But first, here's your headlines, and it's Aaron Armstrong.
Get you up to date with the headlines at 5:33. Around 10 people have been killed after a shooting at an adult education centre in Sweden. A warning, viewers may find the following footage distressing.
Utan jacka. Alltså jag går ner till henne nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning. Folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning!
Place at Campus Ryzbergska in the central city of Örebro, which is attended by students aged 20 and above, although children's schools were in the vicinity. Nearby facilities were locked down and then evacuated. This footage shows students hiding under desks while the attack took place. And now live pictures from Sweden. Police believe the male perpetrator is amongst the dead. We don't know the identity or the age of the shooter or indeed any potential motive. Police have added they don't expect any further attacks and they don't believe there is a terror motive. The Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson has said this is a very painful day for the country. More on this as soon as we get it. A panel of international medical experts has concluded Lucy Letby did not murder any babies after outlining significant new evidence. They believe bad medical care and natural causes led to their deaths. Letby is serving 15 whole life prison sentences after being convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others in 2015 and 2016. The case is to be reviewed by a commission that investigates potential miscarriages of justice after Letby's lawyers applied for her case to be investigated. The chair of the panel, though, Dr. Shuley, has said he believes there are alternative explanations for each of her convictions. The former Children's Commissioner for England, Baroness Anne Longfield, says knife crime involving teenagers is a national crisis that needs a national response. Police are continuing to question a teenager over the fatal stabbing of 15-year-old Harvey Wilgoose at All Saints Catholic School in Sheffield yesterday. Flowers, candles and balloons have been placed on a wall outside the school. Sheffield United fans say they'll pay tribute at their next home match. Well, stop and search data has revealed in the year to the end of June 2024, there were almost 20,000 possessions of a knife or offensive weapon in England and Wales, resulting in a conviction or caution. Children, the perpetrators in 18% of those cases. Finally, China's retaliated after the US imposed 10% tariffs on its goods. Not long after 5 a.m. our time, those came into effect. Well, China then hit back with 15% tariffs on coal and liquefied natural gas and 10% on American crude oil and agricultural machinery. It all came after Donald Trump reversed his decision, at least delayed the decision to impose tariffs on Mexico and Canada for 30 days after agreeing border deals with both countries. Global markets, though, did slump following his decision to impose tariffs. Whether he'll do the same to the EU or indeed UK is yet to be established. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me just after 6 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Colder weather ahead. Yes, it is pretty mild out there today, but it's going to turn quite a bit colder with the return of nighttime frosts through the rest of the week. But it is going to be largely dry through the rest of the week. Not dry out there today thanks to this weather front. It's been slowly creeping across the country, providing some pretty soggy conditions in the west. And for this evening, it'll turn damp across East Anglia and the southeast, but should be out of the way by midnight. Lots of showers coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, some snow on the hills. Most of England and Wales dry and clear through the night, so it will be a colder night than last night, with temperatures in towns and cities down to 2 or 3 degrees, a touch of frost in the countryside. As we go into Wednesday, though, yes, a bit chilly, but generally good-looking day. There'll still be some clouds and a few showers northwest England and particularly into western Scotland, where there'll still be a fairly brisk breeze, but generally the wind's easing. Much of eastern Scotland starting fine and sunny. Same goes for Northern Ireland. 1 or 2 showers will drift in on the breeze, as they will across northwest England, maybe even West Wales and southwest England. But most of England and Wales will be dry, fine and sunny. And many places will stay that way through the day. A bit of cloud will bubble up here and there. There's the small chance of the odd shower drifting into Wales. Across Northern Ireland, certainly showers will keep going in western Scotland. But for the vast majority, it's a fine winter's day on Wednesday. Bit of a chilly start, and then temperatures come the afternoon lower than today, so it will feel colder than today. But these numbers pretty much bang on average for this time of the year. It will turn quite cold quite quickly tomorrow evening. Still a few showers in the far northwest, but otherwise dry, long clear spells. You can see that blue hue on the map of frost forming pretty rapidly. Thursday's then another fine and sunny day with a bit more cloud spilling in for Friday and Saturday, and for all of us turning colder.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. There are long queues in Gwynedd on the eastbound A55 where the inside lane of 2 is blocked off from junction 11 to 12 heading towards Bangor at the scene of a multi-vehicle collision. And on the M62 in Greater Manchester, the inside lane's blocked off westbound from junction 12 to 11 just west of the M60 where a lorry's broken down. In Staffordshire on the M6, the inside lane on that 4-lane stretch blocked off southbound at junction 12 at the A5 Gailey exit, a van's broken down. In West London, the one-way street through Shepherd's Bush Green is closed for a police investigation. Really slow on surrounding routes. Looking at the cameras, particularly on Holland Road and Kensington High Street. And the Kent stretch of the M25, that's still partly blocked anti-clockwise. There's been an accident at the M26. The roadworks on that stretch not helping, of course. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 20 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, an astonishing Freedom of Information Act has revealed that West Yorkshire Police are spending an absolute fortune on diversity initiatives. Forget about the old bill. This is a massive bill because the total diversity, equality and inclusion staff bill comes to £969,188. And when we add to that the external training, the top costs are a grand total of £1.3 million spent on diversity training. We can now speak with the founder of Fair Cop, and that is Harry Miller. Harry, £1.3 million being spent on coppers, I don't know, going on about pronouns and dancing the Macarena. This must absolutely make your blood boil.
Well, it does. I mean, it reads like a script from the BBC mockumentary W1A, doesn't it? Two administrative assistants for DEI and positive action on £30,000 each, and they're supporting the 6 positive action ambassadors who are on £60,000 each. Now, where does this all lead us? Does it solve crime in West Yorkshire? Well, no, it doesn't. What this does, it gives us a police force who are absolutely outstanding at recording crime, because there's so much of it. They're also outstanding at appeasing the local mosque. And as you rightly point out, they're outstanding at doing the Macarena. What they are not so good at is actually solving crime. If you look at the recent HMRC report, they're told in terms of investigating crime requires improvement. Now, that's a euphemism, which means basically they're absolutely pants. As a police force, they are completely rubbish when it comes to solving crime. Recording it, no problem. Solving it, bit of a problem. Now, let's just think about it. If the police service were plumbers, what would we want from our plumbing service? A good plumber is somebody who can fix your radiator and unblock your drains. You're not bothered whether they know that there are 256 different types of microaggression and 300 different genders. What you want is to come in and do the plumbing. And it's exactly the same with the police service. They're spending so much time on DEI nonsense that they have forgot their actual job, which is to go out there and solve crime. Now, with all this training, what you would hope happens is that you've got a veritable bunch of Yorkshire Starsky and Hutchers who are cleaning up the streets of Leeds and Bradford, but it's just not happening. What they're doing, Martin, is going out there, they're dancing on the streets, they're cozying up to the local imams, and they've chosen the side of the bully when it comes to Islam, for instance. I mean, let's not forget that this is the police force that allowed the Batley Grammar School teacher incident to happen. He's still in hiding 4 years later. This is the police force that sat with the bullies at the local mosque because a child had dropped a Quran. They sat with them. This is what DEI brings you. Now then, if we think about it, this is just in West Yorkshire Police. What does this look like if we were to have FOI information across the entirety of the United Kingdom? Well, a bit of good news there, Martin. Working with GB News on this, we have FOI'd every single police force in the country, and we're going to find out precisely what the cost to the great nation of the United Kingdom is for this DEI rubbish. We need a little bit of Trump when it comes to policing. We need to go in there, smash it up, sack the people that are involved, and spend the money on catching criminals. That's what good police officers want to do. So sack this lot, because if you're in DEI as a police officer, basically it means you're not a very good police officer. You're not very good at catching criminals. So let's get rid of you and let's spend that money on good, honest coppers, Martin. That's my recipe for success for today.
Well, it's magnificent to hear that those are the 43 police forces can expect Harry Miller to be tapping on the window in conjunction with GB News. That's great to hear. Got one final slide I just want to put in, and that's that measure you said there. They are actually under, not investigation, but they can improve. And in fact, an astonishing stat on there, Harry Miller, is that only 6.6% of any crimes in the West Yorkshire area, there it is, actually get a judicial result, i.e. somebody getting nicked. Harry Miller, put it to you that DEI stands for Don't Expect Investigations.
That's absolutely right, Martin. That's exactly it. But they have a long history of this. I think back to 2019, where a young woman called Bethany Fields appealed to the police countless times because she was being stalked. They did absolutely nothing until they knocked at a parent's door one day and said, unfortunately, your daughter's been murdered. That's how serious this is, because you can't spend the same pound twice. You can't be spending money on DEI to this extent and have the resources to help actual women, actual victims of crime, to prevent them being the subject of a crime in the first place. And then if they are unfortunate, to go after the criminals. You can't spend the same buck twice.
OK. Harry Miller, founder of Fair Cop. We've got to leave it there. £1.3 million in West Yorkshire. 43 police forces were about to try and get to the bottom of how much they're spending on DEI. Watch that space with Harry Miller and myself, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, West Yorkshire Police told GB News, we are dedicated to building a workforce that reflects the diverse communities it serves and investing in resources for better outcomes for all. Diversity, equality and inclusion is central to the police and crime plan, essential for fostering trust, confidence and public safety. And this aligns with our public sector equality duty and equality objectives. Now, coming up, should we stop eating imported food and instead only buy British? Well, I'll be joined by a farmer who thinks exactly that next with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Feathers McGraw, Wallace and Gromit's their villain, has become an unlikely hit at UK tattoo parlours. He's menacing.
He is, yeah.
He's,
and in fact, he doesn't speak, and he's got this glove on top of his head trying to convince us he's a chicken or something.
And that is a real tattoo that someone has decided to have there. What do you two think about tattoos? Are they express themselves? Or?
I love it. So I've basically got Dr. King. There we go.
Me. Oh, there he goes. Nice. He's showing us.
If you can't fly, run. Nice. It's probably slightly more meaningful than having the
very
Engel.
Oh,
come on, Trey. You want to get Feathers McGraw? Maybe not. It's kind of got that kind. You know when you go abroad and you know beef or Magaluf and you Tenerife and you get a quick tattoo. It's looking like that,
chest,
or like a pirate or something. It's kind of got that vibe. Not for me. However, I do get the sentimentality around it. You know, some people have grown up on Wallace and Gromit and they love it and it has meaning. And he is a well-written character, so I get it.
Brilliant, isn't it?
I prefer my tattoos a bit more meaningful.
Bit more, yeah. I feel like as well, there's a surge in it. Lots of people have had it, but then is it then going to become unpopular because of it? And how many people regret the tattoos? Apparently, not just 14% of people regret tattoos.
Wow.
See, I think that's where the meaningful side comes into it. I've got a couple of meaningful tattoos, and I know I will never get bored of them. Not one on my wrist, one on my ankle. They're not hidden, but yeah, I think because they mean something to me, I'll never get bored.
Yes, exactly. I think that's important. If you're gonna, a tattoo's for life, isn't it?
That's the thing.
It's got to mean
I haven't got
something.
anything.
Have you not?
I'll be indecisive. I think I'll
nothing
get
you
something.
thought I want to keep on my body forever.
If I had about 6 or 7 pints and then stumbled into a tattoo parlour,
you'd come out with
something
that.
chaotic.
I'd be able to pronounce
a disaster. Yeah, a disaster could happen. Then I walk out. And, oh no, I've got this for the rest of my life.
You might become addicted.
Well, let's hope not.
Some people do.
Covered in them.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, here is some wonderful news to cheer us all up, because check this out. The Princess of Wales has been spotted out and about as she joined a group of children on a visit to the National Portrait Gallery. Here we go. These are the video images as part of her gradual return to public engagement following her cancer treatment. There we have Princess Catherine at the National Portrait Gallery, of course, and that's following after those 2 wonderful images were released yesterday from Woodland of the Princess. There she is, returning slowly and gradually and majestically to full public duties. Magnificent stuff. Now, moving on, the farmer Clive Bailey, great friend of the show, has called on Brits to ban foreign foods and only buy British to help support beleaguered British farmers. And Clive joins me now. Clive, welcome to the show. So you put this message out in response to a video I saw on Country File, somehow saying that Brexit is to blame for lax food checks into Britain. Of course, there were no food checks into Britain before Brexit. Nevertheless, you're saying if you truly want to help British farmers, you should boycott foreign foods. Tell us more.
Yeah, evening, Martin. Yeah, well, basically, I mean, first off, UK farmers that were extremely proud to produce probably some of the highest welfare and highest environmental standard food like that there is, basically. Even legal imports to the UK often come in grown to using products or practices and welfare standards that are banned in this country by law and have been for a long time. So even legally imported food isn't the same standard. And, these products are banned or these practices are banned because it's not so good for livestock or whatever. So, but yeah, the Country File thing on Sunday basically pointed out that a lot of food's been imported now to Europe, basically without any checks. So this is opening the door for even lower standard, foods to pass into the UK with no customs checks at all. What trucks are now being told to do is they get into Dover, for instance, and they are told, if they're selected, they are told sent to a checking place, a place called Sevington, which is 22 miles away. Now, this is similar to like turning up back in the UK after your holiday on a flight, going through the bag check, being pulled out on that for a check to see if you've got anything illegal in your suitcase, but being told, look, while you're on your way home, could you just pop into a place and get your bags checked there? Now, I mean, of course, if you've got anything to hide at that point, you're either not going to turn up, which apparently a lot of these selected vehicles aren't even turning up to checks, or you're going to get rid of whatever you've got that you shouldn't have before you get there, aren't you? So it's just they've opened that door and made it so easy for this kind of illegal food to be imported into the UK to these standards, that are just not good.
All right, Clive, we've got a quick minute left. So what do people look for if they want to buy British? You may always look for the Union flag on my produce. There's the red tractor mark. What can people do to ensure they're supporting guys like you?
Yeah, so basically you need to look carefully at the labelling on packaging and make sure that the country of origin is British. That will support UK farmers. I mean, this lack of competitiveness, these higher standards we have to comply to, it all costs money. That's one of the reasons our return on investment when competing with these cheap imports is making it very difficult for us to swallow kind of additional taxes from this government. So look on my packaging carefully. The red tractor gives a level of farm level assurance, but it's by no means the only way of assuring. You need to look deeply into the packaging, read it carefully. Don't be sucked in by some of the fantastic supermarket marketing that can often make things appear British that actually aren't. So,
keep your eyes open and look carefully for it and support British farmers through that.
OK, we've got to leave it there. Support British farmers and the very best of British to you, Clyde Bailey. Always a pleasure to have your company on the show. Thank you very, very much. Wonderful family. And that's all from me today. But don't worry, because up next is Jubes & Co, the fiercest debate show in town. Of course, the return of the man. Nigel Farage is back tonight for Farage. I wonder what he's got to say about this nonsense about non-stick Starmer. The rules never seem to apply to our Prime Minister, the man who hounded Boris Johnson out of office for lockdown rules. I'll see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Have a wonderful evening, but now it's time for your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thanks for joining me for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Colder weather ahead. Yes, it is pretty mild out there today, but it's going to turn quite a bit colder with the return of nighttime frosts through the rest of the week. But it is going to be largely dry through the rest of the week. Not dry out there today thanks to this weather front. It's been slowly creeping across the country, providing some pretty soggy conditions in the west. And for this evening, it'll turn damp across East Anglia and the southeast, but should be out of the way by midnight. Lots of showers coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, some snow on the hills. Most of England and Wales dry and clear through the night, so it will be a colder night than last night, with temperatures in towns and cities down to 2 or 3 degrees, a touch of frost in the countryside. As we go into Wednesday, though, yes, a bit chilly, but generally good-looking day. There'll still be some clouds and a few showers northwest England, and particularly into western Scotland, where there'll still be a fairly brisk breeze, but generally the wind's easing. Much of eastern Scotland starting fine and sunny. Same goes for Northern Ireland. 1 or 2 showers will drift in on the breeze, as they will across northwest England, maybe even West Wales and southwest England. But most of England and Wales will be dry and fine and sunny, and many places will stay that way through the day. A bit of cloud will bubble up here and there. There's the small chance of the odd shower drifting into Wales across Northern Ireland. Certainly showers will keep going in western Scotland, but for the vast majority, it's a fine winter's day on Wednesday. Bit of a chilly start, and then temperatures come the afternoon lower than today, so it will feel colder than today, but these numbers pretty much bang on average for this time of the year. It will turn quite cold quite quickly tomorrow evening. Still a few showers in the far northwest, but otherwise dry, long clear spells. And you can see that blue hue on the map of frost